our special Unsourced Wall Livestream when we're talking about Mirage, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and The Last Ronin, which is basically like the big conclusion to this incarnation, this universe, this timeline of the Turtles from Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. And I thought, like, with that now coming out, this miniseries, after like 2 years of development, finally finishing, what better thing to do than to just go back and talk about Mirage as a whole, like our favorite issues, our favorite eras. There's a lot to unpack. There's like 67 like full issues of this universe, not counting The Last Ronin. So I felt like, well, let me just grab a couple of my turtle loving buddies and let's just really get into it. I mean, there's a lot to say, and I want to give you guys a chance to like introduce yourselves and also tell us your experience, your first sort of impressions of the Turtles and what got you into this franchise. Prime, you go first.
All right. So, Guten Tag, y'all. And I think just like a lot of kids from the 80s, what got me into Turtles, I was part of that first crash of Turtle Mania when the cartoon dropped. And, the 80s, the late 80s movie, like I was all, Turtle Power Cowabunga, had my mom make me, the colored headbands and shit. And so what got me into Mirage comic books, ironically, was one day my brother was doing a research paper at the library, and I just went with him because I wanted to hang out with my brother. And so it's this huge library, and I went to the library desk, and I was like, I like Ninja Turtles. Y'all get into the Turtles books. And the librarian that worked there, she looked at me, and hindsight now, I shit you not, she looked down at me and went, basically, Ale, Ale, you like Ninja Turtles, huh? So let me go find you some books. And so she came back with a stack of the Mirage comic books and said, if you like Ninja Turtles, read this. Never seen it before. And I read them shits. And to say that there was a culture shock coming from being a kid watching the 80s cartoon to having that shit dropped on me, to call it a nuclear bomb would be a slight hyperbole. But it still hit me pretty big. And so I was like, oh man, I got to read more of it, because I never thought like I'd seen the Turtles like, be that brutal and be that, it just blew my little fucking kid mind. And unfortunately, in my area, the Mirage comic books and the local comic book stores, for whatever reason, they were really, really, really hard to find and really, really hard to get. So my exposure to them was, very sporadically. Like I've read a lot of the Archie stuff as a kid, because I read as a kid. I don't remember a lot of it firmly, but I always had that in the back of my mind, that experience with the Mirage comic books from that librarian. And so as an adult, going back and reading some of those issues as they became more accessible to me, just, it reaffirmed one of the things I just really love about this franchise, is that it's literally just about everything in the kitchen sink. And I think that's one of the reasons why, no matter what medium you jump into, is why it's so enduring. That's why it has so many animated series, so many video games, so many interpretations, so many versions, because the concept in and of itself is so malleable and so fucking bonkers. You can go in all kinds of crazy directions. I know I ramble, but I'll stop there.
No, that's great. And but what we'll be trying to answer is, should have gone in all those crazy directions. I have a list here. I have a list of the different directions it went through. All right. So Judge, how about you?
So here's the funny thing. I'm actually not an 80s kid. I'm a 90s kid. I'm literally the definition of a 90s kid because I was born in 1990. So by the time I had any awareness of what a cartoon was, Ninja Turtles was already kind of old hat. It was already losing a lot of steam. I knew what it was. I knew it existed. I'd probably seen some episodes on reruns. I definitely played at least 2 of the beat 'em ups on the arcades, but it wasn't something that I knew about until I started going on, comic book internet in 2000s, late 2000s, and that's when I started finding out. Oh, so the actual original one was this thing, and it was a Frank Miller Daredevil homage. Oh, okay, and there's this movie, Turtles Forever, I think it's called, the one that has all the different realities coming together, and has.
Well, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I started finding out about all these things. I still couldn't find them, but I heard, okay, so there's this whole other version of the Turtles that exists. And eventually I ran into IDW's Turtles, which I already knew. I already knew IDW from G.I. Joe because I fucking love me some G.I. Joe.
Yeah,
so
boy.
It was like, yeah, so it was like, okay, so these guys did a good GI Joe. Let's see what they're doing with turtles. And I started reading, and I haven't stopped since then. Like IDW has become my version of the turtles, as far as I know. But I'm slowly getting awareness of all the other different versions. Mostly thanks to our next guest.
Go ahead.
Yep, that's me. It was me. I did it. No, so I am sort of in between the previous speakers, I think. Mostly when I was a kid, I read the Archie Ninja Turtles comics. Because I grew up in Sweden, we did not get the cartoon on television. You had to have cable, which we did not have. So I saw a few episodes of the cartoon, like random episodes, and I was like, oh, this is okay. But I read the comic book from Archie, and I was really hooked because it had this ongoing storyline. It was like a long form storytelling, which was not really something that you got out of a kid's comic at that point in time. You know, there was usually episodic stuff, at least the stuff that was available here. So it was sort of, for me, it was instead, I didn't read superheroes. I read stuff like the Ninja Turtles, the Adventures series from Archie. And it always kind of stuck with me since then. I started looking into the Mirage series when I discovered that it existed, which happened a bit later. And I was like, wow, this is there's this really hardcore turtle series. Wow, that's awesome. And since then, I've sort of looked back into the franchise whenever it's popped back in, and I never really stopped being a fan, but I've been off and on a little bit since then. So I took the time to read back on all of the Mirage stories and such, because they were really hard to find here, like practically impossible. So I had to wait for the internet for that one. But yeah, I started out with Archie, so it's sort of backwards, but I'm still a fan.
Awesome. So I know that Judge called Prime old, all right, but I'm gonna call all of you old because I think I'm like 95, so midway between the 90s kid and like millennial. So I think I'm my turtles. Like I might have watched Secret Use first. Like that was like an old VHS, like my grandmother in Ecuador had. I watched all the time, but the one thing that actually got me hooked into the series had to have been 2K3, the 2003 for kids cartoon, which I love. I think it's one of the best things to ever come out of the series. Of course, much like Judge and Comrade, I knew there was like this older version of the Turtles, like especially when we get to like Turtles Forever, and when it directly references them, I'm like, okay, but I never had the chance until I got like really into the internet to be able to track down these issues, because even now in our high-tech world of reproduction and reprinting and deluxe hardcovers, you can't really find these things. You can't. It's insane. And when I read that initial run in series, like it was like a cultural shock, because it's so untapped. It's so like pure and raw and just unfiltered, and I love it. And I think I enjoy IDW. I fall off IDW because it started doing stuff that I just didn't find entertaining, and we'll get to that as well. Like I'm not saying IDW is bad, but like it's just not the tone and like the consistency and the rawness that I like out of Turtles, and that's the Mirage stuff. But speaking of Mirage, let's just get right into it. Let's start off with the first 10 issues, which I call the early years, and just give a rundown of what these 10 issues are. Like Prime Gundam mentioned, it's the kitchen sink. I mean, you have Shredder, just, ninja with like just these insane like pauldrons and spikes. You have a mad scientist and evil robot dogs. You have aliens, robots with human brains. You have talking, walking dinosaur aliens. You have like time traveling warrior barbarian anteaters. You have ghosts like passing down spiritual knowledge of how to be a samurai. It's insanity. It is insanity. So I want to hand the floor to whoever wants to talk first about what these first 10 issues, like what's the thing that stands out to you the most? What do you love about it?
I think the first time.
Oh, Prime, go ahead.
Go ahead. No,
Prime,
you get it. You get it. You get it.
Yeah, okay. So I think what we can say first is that, so this series started in 1984 with the first issue. It was originally supposed to be a one-shot, and you can really tell it's supposed to be a one-shot if you read that first issue, because it's super close. Like, it's a close narrative. You have the turtles, they want revenge on the Shredder, they get revenge on the Shredder, the end. And then they just sort of, oh, it's a success. It was by far the most popular thing that Mirage Comics published, so they just ended up making more of them. But the interesting thing about those early issues is they came out very irregularly, so you had to wait months and months for a new issue to come out. They didn't come out monthly. They often didn't even come out bi-monthly. You might get maybe 3 or 4 issues a year, maybe. They were also all oversized, which I don't think people appreciate. They were 30 or 35 pages of just comics, no ads. In a time when a regular superhero comic would be 22 pages with ads included, so maybe 16 pages of story. So this was effectively like a double-sized issue every time you got it, with like all of that art, really thick, no ads in the comic. They were kind of like a little bit special. I think they were a little bit deluxe, so to speak. Okay, so Prime?
No, I was just gonna say that one thing that really stood out to me again, reading as a kid, is that at the end of the first issue, they fucking killed the Shredder. They completely murked the hell out of him. And as like you said, like you can easily tell it's supposed to be a one shot, and like you can easily tell that studio wasn't the studio, because that's why it was called Mirage, because they were just the motherfuckers working out of the kitchen, I believe.
Yeah.
Or someone's living room. Anyway, so it's just amazing just to see to see how they go, and then they did this, and then they did this, but like to see how they just unfolded and built the world. And like Elvis like said, like a lot of crazy shit happens in those first couple of issues. It's why I'm always taken aback when people like, kind of stick their nose up when Ninja Turtles gets, kind of fucking weird. Like the 2003 show, to me, that's like one of the definitive versions of the Ninja Turtles. And the people that I grew up with, knew thing bad. Like a lot of them didn't want to watch it. It was like, they're fighting fucking dinosaur aliens and shit. And I'm like, have y'all read the fucking source? Like, this is par for the course of a Ninja Turtle. Like, this is the most authentic Ninja Turtle experience that you'll probably get. And so I feel like anyone who says who's a Ninja Turtles fan, I don't want to say that sounds so fucking rude. Anyone who is a Ninja Turtles fan, you are doing yourself a disservice if you've never read the first volume. Like, I think IDW released a hardback that I'm still trying to track down. Like,
exactly,
like hardcover collections. I'm like, why is it so hard for us to find this version? Like, I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat and say they're trying to suppress it and make their version to go to Turtles version. But it's so weird that you have this amazing fantasy field, really, well, for the most part, really fun and really well written series, and like you're not like keeping that in constant, keeping that in constant print. Like that's kind of suspect to me. That's a little sussy wussy.
Oh, we could fill an entire podcast just talking about the reprints.
Even a cheap omnibus would be like worth a lot.
Doesn't exist, and has never existed. They have never released like a thick collection of those early issues. It's always been like these thin deluxe collections that cost like a mint just for the first 3 issues.
Like, come on, yeah.
Which is messed up.
All right, so Judge, how about you?
I think what really stands out to me about those early years is that there's nothing in those issues that Eastman and Laird didn't want it to be there. And I think that's kind of the spirit, in a sense, of TMNT. It's like, what do I want to see in a comic? What is fun for me? What is cool and rad and badass and awesome, and I want it to be there? And I think that's kind of also, in a lot of ways, the spirit of 80s indie comics in general. That feeling of this is just pure it. This is just pure imagination, pure what I want to be there on the page. I don't care if it sells to, if it becomes a major hit or anything. Just doing comics almost for myself. And I think what's awesome about that is that it almost carries forward into the present. It's like everything that happens in Turtles, you can see it all come back to just what 2 very particular people thought was cool in a very particular moment in time. And that's it. And I think that's just priceless, and it's awesome. and to see that kind of indie spirit carry forward after all these years, it makes it feel like something special, particular, you know.
And I think also it's important to remember when you talk about the 80s comics, this comic was the catalyst of 1980s indie comics. Like people did indie comics before this. Yes, there had been a surge in the late 60s, for example, with people like Robert Crumb. But in the 70s, it had sort of declined until this comic came out and sold so well that it spawned a horde of imitators. If you look at third-party publishers like Malibu, for example, Eclipse, all of these companies, they were all founded after this comic came out because they were all companies and people who saw that Eastman and Laird had made something that had been successful and they wanted a slice of that pie. So that was the reason for the 80s indie comics explosion. They all wanted to be Ninja Turtles, essentially.
And yeah, for me, like, again, I there's nothing that you guys haven't said that I wouldn't agree with. Like I said, when you get back to the source, like if any kind of large running spanning franchise, like you see it with Ultraman, you see it with like Kamen Rider, you see it with even Super Sentai, you know, Power Ranger and all that stuff. Like you go back to like the original like series, the original spark. There's just something so unfettered about it. Like there's no self-consciousness about it. Like we want to make something, and these people just went out and did it, and they didn't know if it was gonna like be a hit. They didn't know if it was gonna succeed, but they did it because they had this idea. They thought it would be really cool to do, and that's what this series is. I mean, like how you go from one shot where it's just I'm not gonna say just a fight with like an evil kind of ninja with spears on his and spikes on his wrists and shoulders, but you go from that, and your first issue back is mad scientist threatening to blow up the Twin Towers. You know, like that's the second issue. That's with his army of robot dogs, and it's like cool. Let's do this. This is what we're in for. That issue has only gotten better with age because of how audacious it now is. You know, but back then, like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea. Now, like, oh, these guys were like just on a different wavelength, you know, and that's what I love about these issues. That's what I love about like stuff like Fugitoid, which is such a corny idea. Let me see if I can get a picture of Fugitoid up here, because like I don't know, you have Triceratops. I think Triceratops, like the walking, talking, like evil dinosaur spaceman, like that's fun, that's fine, but like Fugitoid is so goofy, is so ridiculous that you know that it comes from a passionate place because no one else would
Here's a fun fact. The first Fugitoid story is also the first Mirage story I ever read. Because it came reprinted in an IDW annual or something like that.
Yeah. And he was originally supposed to be like an independent character because his origin story doesn't.
It's a micro series, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have the turtles in it at all. Like it's just Fugitoid #1. So they just sort of tie that in and like, oh, this is a shared universe, and now he.
Yes. Well, yeah. To finish that thought, yeah, because Fugitoid has like spin-offs and crossovers, other stuff from Mirage, other third-party companies outside of Turtles. Like I see ads for it all the time reading these back issues, and that's really so weird. Like again, this is like Jar Jar levels of I want to do this specific idea, and I'm not knocking Jar Jar Binks or anything like that, but like that's the kind of wavelength this is on, you know.
Nothing but respect for my Jar Jar Binks.
I mean, and even his like origin story is ridiculous. Like, we're like, oh, like he's getting hunted by an evil alien government because they want to use his brain to make like weapons of mass destruction. It's insane. I love it. But I think we should talk about the micro series as well as a whole. Well, Comrade is getting all set up. Now there's 4 main ones. Retroactively, Fugitoid had a micro series, but that was meant to be like a pilot for like a Fugitoid series. So we have Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Leonardo. Those micro series, which are all really insane and fun. All right, so who here has read the micro series? I know Prime has. Want to take the lead on that?
It has been some years since I've read them. And then you're asking me to castigate way back. Because what's weird, because like you say, like the publications for the original Mirage series is so weird. Like it's not a chronological story. I think after was it the first 13, they start jumping around, and you have to like go in and like you have to insert the micro series, and you have to go and insert issues of Tales of the TMNT to fill out the complete story, but like they weren't published in chronological order. If I'm remembering right, like correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, definitely. What happens is that after like the first two, because I'm rereading the actual sort of like back issues, like old scans. And I'm admit that, because we all admit that like paying $80 for a hardcover is ridiculous. So I'm not going to like get on my case about that. But like you get ads after Leonardo, which I think they stopped advertising the micro series. Like because you'd be like the first one, Raphael. You get to like issue like 3 or 4, and it's like, oh, up next is Tmnt number 4 on this month, but don't forget to read Tmnt micro series number 1, Raphael. Like, and then they just stop giving a shit.
Because isn't the micro series, isn't that when Raph goes to meet Casey, and isn't
yes.
the Leo one when he goes to do with Karai? Like I'm trying to remember. Please forgive me. Like I'm honestly goodness trying to remember. I'm not looking up anything. This is all coming off the top of my head.
I think okay. So like the Donatello one is when he meets Jack Kirby, which again I'll tell you right now, I don't think any fifth turtle name should be anything other than Kirby. I hate names that aren't Kirby, because it's ridiculous and I don't like it. I think it's lame. Hey, Comrade, are you okay? We can't hear him right now. But yeah, no. Let me just get the Raphael one up on screen. But yeah, no, it's. Out of all of them, I do think the Raphael one is the best. It's the most Mirage-y, because the Kirby one, the Jack Kirby Donatello one, is just this fanciful like homage to Jack Kirby, and it just doesn't fit, in the series. It just doesn't. But Raphael is like this. Is what Laird and Eastman do the best. It's just like balls to the wall, like grunting, aggressive action, and I don't see why anything should be anything other than that. But what are your favorites, Prime?
I don't know. I'm a weirdo. I'm really fond of the Leonardo Karai story, where they go again. I'm trying to remember from top of my head. Isn't that where they go to train? And we get to see a lot of internal monologue from Leonardo about how he feels in his place with the team and what he should be doing. If I remember, am I mixing up stories? Am I mixing up comics?
I'm looking it up right now. Let me see. It's like they stopped. Oh no, that's the Leonardo micro series, at least the original Leonardo micro series from Mirage, is the prequel to the Northampton arc.
Oh shit, I'm way off base then.
Yes, no, I think again, City at War is like 13 issues long, so it's probably City at War, or you're probably thinking of like a micro series from like Volume 3, like because there's a big Leonardo teaming up Karai story in like 98.
Right. Isn't that also the one where they isn't that the one that got removed from continuity, where like they came back and they left? Because like it gets really fucking crazy, because it's like it's Volume 1, Volume 2, then that's Volume 3, and they jumped to Image Comics.
Yes, that's the one you're thinking of.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the micro series again. What I hate so much is that, and what got me out of like IDW is that they continue this tactic of having micro series, and like I enjoyed the series, but I just didn't care enough to catch up on all this. Like, oh look, here's the Hun micro series number 1. Don't give a shit. Here's Kitsune, whatever her name was, micro series number 1. Please, just you don't need to have these, all right?
Yeah, I think the only one that I really liked from them was the Secret History of the Foot Clan. I thought that was fucking dope.
What about you, Judge? Any ones that stand out for you?
Not really. To be honest, I think because it's also that kind of problem. It's that you have all these micro series, and except for a few exceptions, you look at them and say, well, is there any reason why this had to be its own story? The original one's just fine. But after a while, it's like micro series just became like one of those names that they had for like
Brand
for-
recognition,
Exactly. It's like, why? How is this different from
a one shot.
A one shot or a book or anything? It's like it's not. It's even the same size. So yeah, I don't really think I have a favorite of those. I do have a few favorite characters, but that's neither here nor there.
So it seems that like Bullski's having some audio issues. I don't think we're going too intensive enough. So hopefully, like when he can like pop right in, we'll be good to go.
Right up.
All right. So like again, I think again it's one of the things that like really sort of messes up the continuity because if you're reading like the actual sort of story as it's going along, by the time you get to the Northampton arc and like what that means, it just feels like so rushed. Like you go from like a random singular story about like them just hanging around with in April's apartment to like Leonardo like being bloody and passed out in April's living room saying, "Oh, the Shredder's back." Okay, so like what happened there? And again, after like the first two, they stopped promoting these. So there's nowhere in that issue is there like any kind of editor's note or promo page saying you should have read Leonardo #1.
Oh, now you're telling me.
Right, it does fuck up the flow.
I imagine it must have been like even worse back then when this kind of stuff was just not readily available. Not
Exactly.
that it's very readily available right now unless you do things.
Right.
But back then it must have been like, hey, like go to your comic store, get that issue, and then come back like, hey, what did I miss?
Pray that there's something in Wizard that tells you what you fucking missed.
Now, let's just move on into I think the final issue of like what I'm calling like the early years, right before Northampton. Let me just pull that page up right now. Let me show that on the stream. All right, so now there's that infamous story when they're making the first film, which let me tell you was around production, or at least about like half a year after this, or like half a couple, like 12 issues after this issue came out. So like they had a bunch of time to like really get a sense of what they were doing. That like when they're making a film, one producer was like, "Here's the first 12 issues. This is the story. Like write a script based on these 12 issues," and it's awesome. And I feel like that really helped because there's such a tight continuity with these issues that like without them, what are you left with? And like there is no backbone in the story because like the Shredder only appears in the first issue, and you can't expand the first issue long enough to make a filling like film. And so you're either left with like random alien adventures, which was like their longest story arc, like the Utrom Triceraton and Fugitoid like story arc lasts like 6 issues.
Yeah,
And
which you're not going to do in the budget of an indie comic book movie in the 80s.
Right, and they basically blew their load on the turtle suits.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so
it was a worthy blowing of the load there. Like it totally paid off. But
Oh yes, I agree. Yes, I definitely agree.
And so, like, by bringing the Shredder back in this way, it gives everything like an actual arc to build toward. And again, I think that's really awesome. That's really probably the thing that the saving grace of the film, which again, it's a fine film, but this is where we're going to see the difference between this and the sequel. I'm going to mention that when we get there. But let's talk about Northampton, because this issue and this layup, the Leonardo micro series leads up to Northampton, which honestly isn't as long as people remember. It's only like 6-7 issues, and 5 of those are like guest spots. So when Northampton arc is collected, they only collect like those 3 issues that actually move the story forward, and that's a big contention with Tmnt like hard purists, is that like a lot of the guest issues just don't get collected from legal rights to just practicality reasons. So in Northampton, we have like the April's journal issue, which is April kind of chronicling like Leo training and them trying to recuperate stuff that you see in the film. You see them training, you see them recuperating, you see them taking stock. So that's directly in the film. And then you have like several one like singular adventures. Like Peter Laird does an issue where like just it's about like radicalized terrorists, domestic terrorists trying to like get like a nuclear bomb. You have a guest issue where Donnie and this alien supernatural princess fall in love. You have this gangster parody issue that they did that they promoted the hell out of. Like Eastman and Laird were insanely proud of this gangster parody issue, noir kind of series, and it's really fun. But it's like it's nothing. Like it doesn't move it doesn't move the story forward any bit. You get the first gag issue, which is really insanely weird, where it's this fourth wall breaking alien shape-shifting little girl and it's like an ambush bug kind of thing, where like you're getting a lot of references, a lot of little fun little jokes here and there, but it's nothing. It's a pointless issue. You get an issue where Michelangelo writes weeaboo fanfic, and that's about it. And then you get a weird Bruce Lee parody issue, and that's about it. And so, like when you see like hardcovers and collections, you only collect the April issue, which is basically the entirety of the Northampton arc by itself, and maybe the Unmentionables, that gangster parody. And that's about it before we get right to Return to New York. So, Prime Gundam, have you read this arc very loosely worded?
This arc.
Been years ago. Like I don't even remember the ambush bug little girl. I vaguely remember the Untouchables, that parody. Like I said, it's been many years. So my recollection on that arc is not 1000% the best.
Comrade, we didn't get to hear your thoughts about like the later issues leading up to Northampton and Northampton itself. So if you just take it away.
Okay, so yeah, they were kind of losing steam for a while, and they started doing these issues. I heard you talked about like the Space Princess issue and those issues, which were done by either Eastman or Laird, or sometimes one of their other people in the studio, and it was just really aimless. Like, oh yeah, there's this space princess, and that's never gonna come back to anything, and there are these terrorists and stuff like that. And it didn't really pick up again until they did return to New York later. And then, yeah, exactly. It's just this aimless era when you don't know anything that happens. Also, you get the first superhero story in this era, the Justice. They're not called the Justice Force in the comic. They're called something else, but they are the Justice Force. I think so.
I'm pretty sure they called. I just read that issue. Like,
they are. Yeah, that's that issue is like a canonical issue because that one's always reprinted in the collections.
Ridiculous.
And those characters do come back later, like much like 20 years later. So they are important, but it's a very random issue, like in the middle of it. Like that issue always stuck out to me. It's like up until that point, that's issue 14, I think. You have not really had any kind of sense that there are superheroes in that universe. Like there's weird stuff, certainly. And then suddenly you have this, oh yeah, and this guy who runs the comic book shop that Mikey gets his comics from, he's a retired superhero. And he's part of like this Justice League team who used to be around in the Silver Age. Okay, yeah, sure. It's just so random, all of it's just so random.
And like it's not cool, or it's not like creative in the way that TMNT should be. Like at that point we've seen like talking, walking alien government that look like triceratopses, and we've had Fugitoid, we've had mystical kind of scenarios, we've had like gangsters, gang members, ninjas of all sorts and sizes, we have samurai ghosts, all that stuff. And then like, oh, also just regular superheroes. It just feels like a downgrade. It doesn't feel like it's pushing forward the creativity or the imagination of the world further. It just feels like your standard kind of issue, and that's why I feel like a lot of these guest or one-shot issues in Northampton, like it's just, it feels like they had to space it out. Like they didn't want to go directly back to New York. They knew they had to like kind of keep things even to make that impactful. But I think there's a reason why in collections we go like straight back to New York because like
Well, usually, yeah, exactly. But I mean, the reason was that Eastman and Laird were getting busy with the Ninja Turtles Empire at the time, so they were handling like one or the other of them was always handling business side, and they were negotiating for toys, and especially making sure that the first movie got made. So they didn't really have time to sit down and do issues together, and I don't think dividing it up like that really worked out, as you say. I think those issues are just kind of
oh yeah, definitely. And when reading these back issues, the toys started being like planned and in production by like issue 4. It's insane. All right, so Northampton. All right, I think we've all said we need to save Northampton. Like two or three good issues. The rest is just junk. Like, and you only really need the April journal issue because it's a beautiful kind of issue. You really get the sense that she is a writer. Like I know it's just like what Eastman and Laird think is like good writing. It's poetic and fanciful in that kind of way. But it's meaningful. Like you get like a really deep look into April when she just kind of been like this ancillary character for like 8 issues. You know.
That's the one issue that they put in the movie as well. Like aspects
Exactly.
of it made it into the movie script. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's great. And again, not much about Northampton. Let's move on to the big guns. Return to New York, which was the issue. Which was this the series that was like kind of the arc that was in production while the movie was being made. So they had like the barest amount to use this from when making the film. But Prime, take it away. What do you think about Return to New York?
I think it's an arc so dope they had to adapt it 3 times. I would say it's one of the quintessential Ninja Turtle stories. Right up there with City at War.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, definitely. What about you, Judge? Got anything to say about Return to New York? You know what Return to New York is about, first of all? Because I feel like I need some explaining. Return to New York is like the big capstone for like the first half of the TMNT like mega arc, even though it's like more like a third of the way in, but like a third of the issues don't count. It is basically like Leonardo's big moment in the sun. But it's got so much ridiculous, insane like ideas in it that like if you like say like this is Leonardo's big shining moment, this is the capstone to his character arc of being the leader, of being like the responsible one, of having to take like the family on his shoulders, you know, being the one who was there to like lead the charge. The first thing to mind wouldn't be like let me see, mutant shredders that look like lobsters. You know, it wouldn't be.
They're mutant shredder clones. Like they remake the shredder. The Foot Clan remakes the shredder. They make 3 failed clones who are like lobster shredder, giant ogre shredder, and there's this little guy with the big head. And then there is like the perfected shredder, who is, I think this was directly made just based on Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, because I think they talk about flatworms. I think they said like they feed
like maggots or something.
Yeah, exactly. They feed Orokosaki's corpse to maggots, and they get his memories from that, which is just it's the anatomy lesson, you know, the Alan Moore issue with the Swamp Thing origin, basically. And that's how the Shredder comes back. Is essentially he's a worm clone.
Yeah, no, it's still cool. That's the thing. Like, okay, we've gone through like 15 pages of like the most nonsensical thing you could talk about with the Shredder, and like whether or not this is earned, you know, like emotionally, like if there's any emotional like quotient to this story arc at all. And it's like worms. He's made of worms. And it still works. It still works.
I think
because the universe fits it up. Yeah.
No, I think it really works because that arc is the first one where the Shredder really is a character, because in the first issue he is literally just that evil guy that they want revenge on. He's very undefined in that one. In this arc, he speaks. He talks about his ambitions. He talks about how fucked up it is that Splinter has like trained these guys from birth just to kill him, which is something that Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird regretted later, because later editions will edit that part out. But in the original one, Splinter, he really is just raising these guys just to kill the Shredder. That's their purpose in life. They have nothing else, which is really messed up. But yeah, no, it's a great arc. It is. It has a Triceraton who's stranded on Earth since the invasion, who's
Right.
really messed up. He's really fucked up and basically just wants to die in battle. It's a great story, really.
He reminded me so much of Fergie. Anon, if you haven't read this arc, you should. That big Fergie energy from that guy.
Massive. Big guy coming through.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's 100%. He's just living.
He's that guy, like literally that guy.
Just bumbling around, making scraps in the sewers. It's great. I love him. And it's so funny because you see like the Triceraton government, and it's like this guy is like the only thing left of them. It's incredible. And I don't think he's ever been adapted, so it's a shame. They should get on that. The big moment, we'll talk about a little bit more later, is of course the Shredder Leonardo fight, like this big capstone. And let me just try and get like a good picture of it, because like this is just the most insane thing, and the most elegant. I'm gonna say it's the most elegant image the Mirage series ever had. All right, because you have this incredible, like it's so stark. It's up there with like the best things Frank Miller ever did, and this started out as like a Frank Miller kind of fanboy homage series, and like right now it's like the pinnacle of like rivaling that kind of storytelling.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You have this gigantic like dark image, and then just slightly, you see like the thinnest of lines, and it's so artistically sound. Like you don't even get they never even mention it. Like later on, you see like Donatello like carrying like a body shaped pillow, and like I mean body pillow. I mean like a body wrapped in like a carpet. So,
the Shredder.
The Shredder body.
Either or is okay at some point.
But they never say like, "Oh, Leonardo cut his head off," but you get it. It has that resonance, and it's so cool. Like, and I wish the movie had been like 2 years later, and they could have incorporated more of this stuff. Because like when the movie's production at this point, so what they did was that they took the first like 8 issues, 9 issues, 10, scrunched that down to just the bare essentials, cut out the Utroms, cut out the Triceratons, Fugitoid, all that. Kept then used like the Leonardo micro series, the April journal issue to buff it out, and then took the second half, the last couple of pages of the original issue to like give that the story arc of everything.
Yeah. Oh, the Raphael mini as well with Casey. There's a lot of that in the movie. Like a lot of that is in the movie.
Yeah, them getting to blows over nothing, because they're both insane. But like, there's no Return to New York in there, and like, I wish the movie had come out like 2 years later, and we could have seen some of this. I know they probably wouldn't have gone as hard. Like, I know there was like a big kerfuffle about like them not being able to use their weapons so much. Like I think Michelangelo only uses nunchucks once in the film, but like some of that energy would have been so cool.
I mean, what they do with the movie is that they take the first issue and then they sort of conflate that with the Return to New York arc, but sort of the Shredder never dies. Like they sort of because I mean he does. The issue where in the movie where he drives them out from April's shop, that's almost exactly like the issue where they leave New York.
Exactly.
But yeah,
and that's my main take on Return to New York. It's really fun, and I think like it's maybe the peak of the series in so many ways, emotionally, character-wise,
artistically,
yeah, for sure. I don't hate Jim Lawson. I think Jim Lawson's awesome. But like, I don't know, at 13 issues of City at War, which we'll get to soon, I got tired. I got really, like, I want some Eastman ASAP. please. That was my feeling.
I think what's interesting about this particular moment is that thanks to the movie, you start to see which parts of the comic are going to become the core elements of Turtles for a new audience. Like,
Yeah.
there's a whole new audience that are going to think, oh, Turtles, right? Ninjas, New York, Shredder, and that's about it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when you talk about, for example, Northampton usually gets reprinted as just 2 or 3 issues. That's where you see it. You start seeing if Turtles was this wild frontier of just imaginative stuff, this is the moment where it starts to get sort of fenced off. This is the moment where it starts saying, okay, these are the important characters. And that sounds bad, but it also allows for more development of those characters. Once you
But you say that, Judge, but you have to take into consideration that the issue after this issue, When Return to the New York, ends with issue 21. After that, you get 3 years of the guest era, which
Yes.
is just random issue after random issue with
27
no consistency.
27 issues.
3 years.
And you only get like only 4 of those are any good. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the guest stories. Now, we mentioned a couple of them. To make more of a fine point to it, after this issue, after this image, the first issue of the guest era is 3 solid issues of the alien little girl reality warping story. Like, she gets 3 issues to herself, and it's like, they're not good. They're just not good. I don't care.
Yeah, I heard you mention this earlier, the Northampton issue, that first issue with her, which is just like a Twilight Zone episode. It has time travel in it, and it's like it's the Turtles are super incidental to that story, and then they're like, oh, we should like let Mark Martin do like 3 more issues of this exact thing. Like, yeah, that's what you need.
It has time travel and it just cracks me up so much.
Well, I mean, there had already been time travel at this point. Rennet shows up in the Eastman and Laird comics. That's the Cerebus crossover issue, which, I mean, she shows up in most of the versions later on. So there sort of was time travel already in it. Oh, that picture. Oh, no.
I feel like you could have a lot of fun if you just show this page to random comic book fans and we're like, what comic do you think this page is from?
Yeah, a lot of these guest era issues, you can't tell that it's a Ninja Turtle comic for a lot of it. Like, there are only some pages. In some of the issues, like, the turtles barely show up. Which is a good sign, of course.
I'm sending you this page right now, and I'm daring you to do that. And we're gonna read the responses live on air if you get any. But what's gonna happen is, if there's so much to talk about, let's talk about the most memorable ones. I'm talking about the ones we did not like and the ones that just stick out to us every time. Prime, have you read any of the guest era? Because it's a lot. I don't blame you for skipping.
Yeah, I have not seen any of this. Like I said, I didn't even know that chick was a character. I completely blanked her from my fucking mind.
But no, seriously, issues 22 to 49. What comes to mind that we haven't talked about yet? I have a list.
Yes. So Rick Veitch, issues 24 to 26, I think.
Yes, Bloodsucker.
Well, it's called the River Trilogy. Yeah, Bloodsucker is the first issue, which is those 3 issues are really good in my opinion, and I think they are very true to the Eastman and Laird spirit.
Oh yeah. We were talking about this before, and you made a great point. Where like the first issue is like your standard TMNT issue, where it's like the turtles going up against a mutated animal, and like, okay, it's a leech, and it's really fun. It's cool design. Let me get a picture of Bloodsucker out here. I think I always call him Leech, but his character name is Bloodsucker. And it's really awesome. Like there's a classic iconic image, where like he's just like dressed as a cop, and he's just going around. He's having fun. He's having fun. He's a fun character. But then as the series as these issues go on, how do you describe it? What does shenanigans of this trilogy go to?
So you start out with Bloodsucker, who's a mutated leech thing, who's sort of like a stalker killer. He's like a Jason Voorhees kind of thing. He just dresses up as in human clothes and he sucks people dry and that kind of thing. And you're like, oh, that's clearly what this trilogy is going to be about. And then by the end, it's about this Native American guy who doesn't believe in his people's ancient beliefs, I think, if I remember his character right. And his eyes are open because he meets, together with the turtles, he meets a guy from Atlantis who lives in the local river where the turtles live. And you find out that there is one of these dudes in every river on Earth, and he's super powerful. He's some kind of spirit. He's the Old Man River in the title you can see on the screen there. And it just gets into this metaphysical weird shit, and that Native American guy ends up becoming like the new Old Man River at the end, and that's the story. It's just so weird.
And while all this is happening, Bloodsucker got mutated because he started feeding on Raphael's blood, and so Raphael loses his mojo. All right, and he starts becoming a normal turtle, and it's creepy as hell because it's full of turtles. So crazy, and then how do you guys think, who don't remember this or haven't read it, Raphael becomes human again or mutated again? Judge, guess.
Radioactive milkshake.
All right, Prime, your guess.
Blood transfusion?
Okay, how?
I'm hoping from his brothers.
No, he starts eating Bloodsucker.
Right.
That's
awesome.
Amazing.
These issues, write this down, Prime, because they're fun as hell issues. 22 to 23. Track them down. They're fun as hell. Insanity. But what's great about this one, and what makes them probably one of the best guest spots of the series, is that while it's crazy, it also brings forward the story, because it also has the first canonical or at least overt, I'm going to say, because these aren't canonical issues at all. Overt, confirmed romantic entanglement between Casey and April. So, if you didn't read these issues, then later developments kind of came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. After this, we get the return of that alien spiritual princess that Donnie fell in love with.
No. You're mixing them up now.
Am I?
Yeah, you're thinking the next one that's out is Complete Carnage and Radical.
Their designs are so fucking similar.
Yeah. Okay, so Complete Carnage and Radical their first story, I think, was in Tales of the TMNT, which we haven't touched yet.
We will.
Yeah, there are these two superheroes. It's a superheroine and a supervillain. In the first story, they say, they were hit by alien race at the same time, and now they have to fight forever. And they come back in this issue where they totally reinterpret their origins, and she's like a shamaness thing. They do this a lot. There's a lot of Native Americans in this series, a lot of them. But yeah, no, that princess never comes back, ever.
Yeah, I maintain this is a rewritten script because that design is too similar.
Yes.
No, we're talking about the other alien child princess, not the first one, the other one.
All right, so after this, let me see. Let me get the right one out here. We get probably the best guest issue. After this, it's all downhill. There's no need to read the rest of the 27 issues. There isn't. It's a sequel to the Bloodsucker Old Man River trilogy. Not written by Rick Veitch. Let me get it up here. Let's see. Share. Show on stream. Sons of the Silent Age. It's another April issue as well. See, there's a rhyme and reason. It's gonna be a hit issue. if you're seeing April POV, also somehow connected to this Atlantis spiritual elemental bullshit, you're in for a good time. You're in for a good time.
Oh wait, is this the one where they it foreshadows what the future of the world, the TMT world looks like, where they talk about we're going to be brothers forever? And
Yeah.
I think I've read this one. I think I have read this one.
This was
Fishman episode. Yeah.
this was adapted into the 2003 series as well, into an episode. But yeah, this one was done by Stephen Murphy. He worked a lot on early Mirage stories. He had a Mirage comic called Puma Blues, which was a super environmentally oriented comic about like the destruction of the environment. And he would go on to be the writer for the Archie comic. He is like the engineer of the entire Archie comic. And this comic is like, this could be almost an adventurous issue because it has that environmentalist slant and that really melancholy tone to it.
Oh, it's so sad. Like it's the saddest.
It is so sad.
Yeah.
Oh my! I'm gonna share the last page because it's so stark and there's so much emotion in this issue. Like if you haven't read this issue as a TMNT fan, you need to. Like something so powerful about it all. Like maybe sad. I wish the Last Ronin was more like this, honestly. Yeah, man, Jesus Christ, just April, like the turtles are endangered species, and she's only just now realizing it. Oh, they're so. It is tragic. It's a tragic story.
And also, I want to point out this is a Stephen Murphy comic. I think this is the first Mirage issue that ends with an ad for an environmental organization, which happens all the time in the Archie, because this one has a Save the Sea Turtles ad at the end of the issue.
It does. I'm reading right now. The Kemp's really sea turtle is most endangered of all, and you can help save them from extinction. I'm going to see if they're still alive. Come on, fingers crossed. The Kempy sea turtle. Come on.
Please.
Also is present tense.
Yes.
Excellent.
Huzzah!
Although they got downgraded to critical endangerment.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit worse than when this issue came out.
Fans, we did it.
30 years, man. Still going strong.
Means it's time for a sequel. It's time to raise awareness again.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, that issue is really good and sort of essential reading. Really, I mean, it's a really one of the best stories in this run.
And it's also on the issues that again pushes for the Casey April romance. Again, what is it with this Old Man River stuff? That's like we gotta focus on making sure people know that Casey and April are a thing that no other issue does. There's 27 issues of this, and almost none of them push forward the romance. All right, what's next?
They needed something to balance out all the cannibalism.
Yeah, it's true. Right. So I'm gonna list off the plots of some of these, and you guys stop me if you guys want to go in depth on some of these. After this, we get a guest issue that is done in a cartoony, overly stylized design about robot vampire ninjas. And after that, we get Winter Soul, I believe.
After that, there is the only other Rick Veitch issue, which is this weird parody issue about motoring.
Yes,
it's a joke issue, and it's not nearly as good as the other ones. It's mostly more like Hot Wheels. Yeah, it's like reading an easy comic, one of those weird stories from the 50s or something. I don't know.
It's like it's Casey and the Turtles going on a wacky races adventure, basically. It's not bad, but it's like it doesn't fit. Like, what does this do? It's lame in the way that Justice League issue was. Like it doesn't push forward the creativity that much. After that is, I believe, Winter Soul, right?
Yeah.
Talk about Winter Soul. You seem to like it a lot more than I do. I don't like it at all.
No, I think it's fine. It's the only issue of this entire run that's like an alternate universe. Like you would think if you got independent creators in to do anything they wanted with the turtles, you would think they would like do, oh, we'll reimagine them as robots or in space or in another historical period. But the only person who did this is Michael Zully. He would later go on to paint a lot of art for the Sandman for Neil Gaiman, for example, which made him really famous. But this is basically, it's a story where the turtles live in feudal Japan, and that's basically it. It's not super it's not super complicated, the story or anything. But it's at least something. And like there's something there to read, I feel, unlike
Yeah.
all of these parody issues.
No, there is a lot more elegance to the series. It's very Last Ronin-y. It takes the mythology and the cultural history of the turtles, or what they're trying to do, like all these kind of Eastern, kind of Asian kind of influences, like and even art style has a lot of indebted to that, and it really tries to give it a level of poignancy. I do want to give like a shout out to like our one commenter, stories and videos residency. Thanks for keeping on us. Awesome. Thank you so much. But what I don't like with this issue is that it stands out too much. Like if more of the guest issues were like this issue, I would love it more. But going from like really, really comedic, unbearable issues to like something so hyper stylized, so hyper realistic, it is unbearable. I get whiplash. And the designs are really cool though. Like these are like some gritty ass turtles.
It should have. I think that issue should have been. What's the difference between Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the main series at this point? And nothing.
Yeah.
Like there's no difference. But I feel this issue could have been distinguished by being like in a separate series of some kind.
Right.
Or
exactly.
I don't know.
All right. Also, Stories and Videos Residency is saying hi to Comrade and Judge. Say hi back. Be nice.
Hello.
All right. So, again, let's go on the list. The next one is the TMNT fighting mummies are in Egypt and also Egyptian gods. Not much to say there. Again, we don't need to say anything. There's a lot to go through. Comrade, I know you're itching. You really want to say something?
No, it's by Mark Bode, who is the son of Vaughn Bode, who created Wizards. He was one of the greatest 1970s indie curators. But that issue is, it's another parody issue. Forget it.
All right. So next one after that is interesting. I think it's a time travel Renee art story with art by Richard Coven.
Yep. Correct.
Not much to say about that one. Renee got hot. That's pretty much the entire thing. Oh wait, no, she gets hot later. God damn it! Why did I have this in my notes? I sound like a perv. That's the joke. The comic said it. The comic said it. The turtles say like, Renee, you got hot. Okay.
Are you telling me that famous heavy metal artist Richard Corben made a female character hot?
But I don't think that's that issue, actually.
No,
I think that's later.
She got hot later. That's why I mentioned. I have it in my notes. I wrote down Renee got hot.
And the world changed forever.
All right. So we got a question. Is this weirder than what Archie did? Comrade.
That's a hard call to make. I mean, Archie went into some very, very weird areas. Like they had like silent issues, and they had issues with the gods, and they had issues about the future. But I think what Archie had was that it had a rather solid, thorough line. It had story arcs. It had character arcs. Whereas this is just randomness. This is just random shit with the Ninja Turtles name on it. It could just as well not be Ninja Turtles comics, in my opinion, many of these.
Speaking of that, the next one's a gag issue. Isn't that fun? All right. Yeah, it's a gag issue. Guy is scared of the turtles. I've seen it once. It's done in a really hyper cartoony style. It has nothing to do with the TMNT, basically. They're just in it just to be like random punchlines. All right. Issue after that is more hyper stylized. Well, it's the sequel to Winter Soul.
Yeah, it's the next two issues are the last two parts of that trilogy, which is
very Last Ronin-y.
Which is the one arc of this entire run that they keep reprinting, because that's even now you can buy that in a collection.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't.
It's surprising.
I'm not a big fan of it, but like it has the most like artistic merit of anything. All right. After that, well, during these issues, we start getting promotional ads for the second film, and I wanted to make a point of that because with the first movie, you had like a really continuity heavy chunk of like 11 to 13 issues, right? And then the second movie had this. All right, like after Return to New York, you have nothing to build a movie off of. Out of all these stories we've told so far, what could the second movie have done? It's insanity.
Bloodsucker.
Yeah.
That's really cool. All right.
Well, yeah, that would have been dope.
But yeah, what they did, the second movie was more based on the cartoon. Toka and Razor were supposed to be Bebop and Rocksteady, but they decided to go with something else. So they were really leaning more into the cartoon mentality at that point.
Oh, hey, our commenter says if they want to talk about an idea they have for the second film, go ahead. I'll put your idea on the screen. Well, let's hear it. But also, what we're talking about that. Okay, we got some other like random issues here. We have one where they go on a spirit quest in the woods camping and they kill a version of Splinter in their minds. Not that great. Then we have 3 more issues that are just random gag comedy issues about aliens that are vampires kidnapping cows. Boring. Then we have an anthology issue, which is pretty kind of interesting, where we see each of the turtles' dreams. Like we see like just what's keeping them up at night. That's a fun issue. And then after that is the Renee Gets Hot story, where it's Savati's, who is Renee's archenemy.
Yeah. From the original issue by Eastman and Laird. Yeah.
His wife wants revenge on the turtles, and the turtles keep saying Renee got hot. Let me show you. I feel like we should do a comparison.
Yeah, no, they do. They're like, oh no, like you have control of your powers, and you're also really sexy now. And she's like, yeah, it's been like 1,000 years for me, or something like that. I don't know. It's a weird issue. It's also not canon, of course, but
aren't they all canon? Did you tell me that they were all canon?
no, they're not. None of these are canon except for like if they're reprinted in the Mirage collections, then they are canon. So it's like Sons of the Silent Age, basically, and 1 or 2 of the others.
So this is what Renee used to look like, and like basically, what she looks like after this is without the headdress and with leggings. I can't find a picture of that. I'm not gonna look it up. I don't want to spend more time on this than I have to.
I can't believe they ruined her. Why would you take away the headdress? Look at that hat. That's the sexiest part of her.
I know, right? Anyway, let's look at this idea. I think it's really good. Maybe they could have done something with a foot led by Tatsu wanting revenge. A loose adaptation of the Shredder seeming to return with the clones. That would have been cool, like a bunch of pretender Shredders.
Yeah.
Like, that would have been awesome. You know what? Check that off. That should have been the second film. You hit a home run with this one.
Besides, man, imagine all the toys you could have gotten out of it.
Yeah, like a big beefy Shredder, a lean small Shredder, Shredder 5-pack. Let's do it.
Shredder combiner where you buy 5 Shredders and they just merge into one like a transformer.
All right. So we have okay. Next one is another guest issue where they fight a Minotaur and other mythological beasts. Not really that good. Is another guest issue where Raph finds a friend with like a female kickboxer. Did no romance in that. He just finds a friend. It's like a remake of that Casey issue, the record series. It's fun. Like all the other turtles find love except for Raph and Mikey in this series. It's pretty disappointing. Well, not disappointing. Like, they don't really need love. They're solid. After that, we get a sequel to an issue from Tales of the TMNT, which only proves a point where like why was Tales separate? We'll never know. Which was about Leatherhead. We'll get to him later. We'll get to all these later. After that, 46 to 47 is a 2-parter about the spiritual samurai ghost that I mentioned way back, which is also an origin story for the foot. And I think I like that one a lot too. So
yeah, and these issues 45 to 48, I think, are also officially canon because they aren't really guest issues. They are all done by people working in the Mirage studio for Eastman and Laird. So this is sort of the run-up to where Eastman and Laird were preparing to take back the series. They were like, we're not going to have any more of this random bullshit with space aliens comedy shit. We're going to have some relatively solid Ninja Turtle stories again for like half a year, and that's why you got these issues.
Finally, said the fandom. Hopefully, hopefully the fandom wasn't like, we need more of the comedy issues.
No, go back. I was having fun.
At this point, the last real issue had been in 1989. We are now in the middle of 1992, so we're going on 3 years of this.
Yes. And then after this, we get a two-parter, which leads directly into City at War, which is about Casey going on a vigilante hunt and accidentally killing a kid. That he's like a punk thug. He hits him too hard. His neck breaks, all that shit. And it basically fractures the team for a bit, which is where we find him at City at War. You want to talk about this two-parter?
No, we can go on to City at War because that's going to be the big one, right?
Oh, no, we're not talking about City at War yet. We're talking about Tales of the Tmnt.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about Tales of the Tmnt. We're not going to talk about a lot unless Comrade has something to say. Basically, what the guest series should have been, which is basically all the stuff that built up to City at War happens here. We see the introduction of Nobody. We see the introduction of the Rat King. We see the introduction of Leatherhead. All the stuff that we see sequels to or development of in the main series and in City at War doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So why was there the point? Just add these issues in.
It's so strange that Tales of the TMNT was its own series, but these other issues were like part of the main numbering. Like, wouldn't it have been the other way around? Because, I mean, Tales was done mostly by the Mirage studio or artists and writers. So you would think that would be the main series, right? But no, it's not.
What do you got to say about this, Prime?
Gee, I really don't have that much to say about it.
None about Tales? You ever read Tales?
Not those Tales, not the lead up to. That's all.
They're really good. Like, the Rat King issue is seminal, man. It is incredible.
It's interesting you mentioned it as well. We should probably mention that Tales is where a lot of the characters that ended up in the cartoon came from.
Yes.
Like, a lot of the characters that we would today consider to be fairly iconic to the franchise, like Leatherhead, they came from the spin-off series, which is also strange, but yes.
And we get more issues centering around like their life at Northampton, and so there's a reason why when you mentioned the IDW hardcover collections, they just slot Tales right in there. Because why not? Like you get actual narrative cohesiveness, and I love Tales. I love the Rat King. Stories has like stories and videos. Rarely has a theory. Maybe the idea was something like the macro series, where the side story or character focused. Yeah, like that's a good idea. But like Bullski was saying, why not just have that in your main series? You know,
I figure the problem was that by then the main series was already kind of locked down. Like they must have had material for a while, and then they realized, oh shit, we need to just start putting out stuff to start preparing for the next arc. And they had to choose between, okay, do we take all the stuff that we already reserved for the main series and put it in Tales, or do we just do we switch them around? Did you start something new? So I imagine that by that point it was just a matter of like.
Well, that can't be true because Tales ended sort of before the guest era ended. That happened back like at the start of the guest era. Tales didn't run that long. It was like a year or something like that.
Yeah, it's only like 7 issues, but like so much of it is like actually ties in heavily to the main series.
Yes.
Yeah, like this is where the important stuff is happening, kids.
Yeah, like look at Rat King. Rat King is such a fantastic issue, and it's been adapted so many times too, and like it's just like this one-off issue in a random like anthology series. It's madness. It
And
is madness.
that character, the Rat King in that issue, he is nothing like any of the versions that you see in any adaptations.
Yeah, no,
Like
like
that first version of the Rat King, he's just a guy who they operated on his brain, and he went crazy, and now he's a slasher killer. That's the Rat King point.
I always got more of a fan of the opera kind of vibe from
Yeah,
him.
yeah,
He's
sure,
tragic.
yeah.
He's tragic. He's a tragic
He's
character.
tragic. He hides out and then, but he does come back later, you know.
And that's
So
why I was so disgusted by IDW and their version of the Rat King. How dare you?
But also before we leave this entire era and go into City at War or beyond that, there were also a bunch of short comics that Eastman and Laird and the other Mirage people did in the 80s, which often do not get collected, but they did like little issues like at the back end of Puma Blues, that other comic that I mentioned, you would sometimes get like a Ninja Turtles comic by Eastman and Laird, which is kind of a bother. So there are also like 20 or something short stories from various random publications that have like Eastman and Laird TMNT stuff in them, which are rather annoying to find and read.
Yeah. But yeah, you guys have anything to say about Tails? Nothing else? All right, let's go into the big one. Let's not talk about it in the micro. Let's talk about this in the macro. You know, because it's 13 issues. It is the longest TMNT epic I think they've ever done. I don't think anything has topped this in terms of like sheer mass, and it is the epic City at War.
You know, back in the days when a story having war in the title was big.
So Comrade, you take the lead on this. I always glaze over. Like I know it's the ending, but like I just never care about it halfway through.
Okay, so I don't think we should cover this in the micro, like what happens in City at War, but what we can say is it's the concluding storyline of the first volume of Mirage. It was at the time conceived of as the final Mirage part of the Mirage epic. They didn't want to come back to the Turtles really at this point. So it ran for well over a year. It ended in late 1993. And it's basically the Foot Clan come to New York to basically clean up after the Shredder, and basically there's a giant fight between all sorts of factions get involved, and the Turtles are stuck in the middle of it. And of course, the thing that we have to mention, because Judge is here, is that this is a story arc that introduced Karai to the mythos. Who is
highly different.
Who is at this point when she is introduced, Karai is a character who has returned in almost every iteration of the Ninja Turtles since then. She's part of the mythos now. She's iconic.
Highly different though.
Sorry?
Highly different though.
Yes, in this original story, she is first of all she's older than the Shredder. She is his superior and his senior from Japan. She has no blood relation to him or any of the Turtles or Splinter or any of that. And she also has like an adult daughter already at this point. So she is like older and she's a badass, basically. So Judge, you have something to say here.
She's kind of my favorite character of TMNT in general. Like, just in general. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't need her to be in it, but when she is in it, I'm like, yay! I just get excited. I like her. I like her a lot, and I like her in this introduction because she's just such a rare kind of character.
It's the haircut, isn't it?
It's also her haircut. It's also her design. It's also just general personality and stuff. It's also the way the books usually just let her be cool in general. Sometimes it's just usually just degraded to like a second in command or stuff like that. But when she gets to be her own character, when she gets to be like this different kind of leader, I find her like super interesting and compelling. She's like really, really good character.
And that's something that we've never really come back to the way that we did in City at War, because Karai is in that one. She is very independent. She's not second fiddle to anybody. She drives the plot forward in many ways, and we've sort of never come back to that. Like the 2003 series do sort of move in that direction, but it lasts for like 2 episodes, and then she just leaves, and you're like, oh, okay.
Bullski, I have to ask you a question. At what point did Karai become Leonardo's default love interest?
Is she?
I
Yeah,
think
I
it
mean-
might have been the series I was confusing with when they went off together.
That was volume
Yeah.
4 around, but like they don't really have any romantic stuff in that issue. But
No.
I think it was 2K3. I think it was just only 2K3 is why they're not defaulted love interests.
I think it must have been right, because the Mirage comic hadn't started up again at that point, did it? It started after that. And
Yeah.
in that one, they brought Karai back, and she had all of this stuff with them. But yeah, no, it may actually have been in the show.
It's so ridiculous because like you're saying, she's so independent, but now every time we see her, she's so indebted and involved with other characters' backstories. It kind of ruins her agency a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like a kind of
Yes,
shame.
she also I've said this to Judge many times. She gets younger every time they do a new version of the Ninja Turtles. Karai gets younger. She used to be like in this issue. She's like maybe 40 or something like that, because she has like a daughter who's in her 20s. And then in 2003, she's younger because she has to be Shredder's daughter. And then later on, she comes back in the 2012 series, and she's a teenager. So eventually, you're just gonna get like Shredder with like a baby carrier with Karai in it or something like that. That's where we're going.
Well, to be fair, in Rise, she was Splinter's mother.
Yeah, that was a
So
fun.
they broke the
little-
chain.
Oh,
That was a
there you
fun
go.
little thing.
all right.
Yeah.
All right. So, Prime, CD at War, thoughts.
So again, it's been one of the stories. It's been a while since I've read it all from start to finish, but I remember one of the moments that broke me away was when Karai donned Shredder's armor and said, "I run this shit now." And because back then, like it wasn't like a big deal. Like to me, I think like if that happened now, like if Ninja Turtles was brand new and something like that happened today, I think a lot of people make a big issue or a big deal about it. But like back when I read it, I was just like, "Oh, cool!" It just kept moving along with it. But I feel like if they were to do a brand new Ninja Turtle movie, if they were gonna do another reboot, if they do it right, I feel like this should be like the final movie. Like this should be what all the roads will be like leading to cap it off. Because it's gotten a couple of really decent adaptations, like in the 2003, and I think the last half of season 5 of the 2012 show took a lot of elements from it.
Yep.
Hell, even IDW did it.
Yeah, because it's
Absolutely.
it's a really good story.
It's a really good story, and it's also like a really obvious concept. You have all these different factions, all these different stories. What are you gonna do? Well, just mash them together.
Yeah,
It's a very wonderfully and very I would say comic booky element of event to do. But like I said, I feel like it should be like that should be your Ninja Turtles Ragnarok, because that's essentially what this is.
It is. Now I said that I got like bored halfway through, which again, like it is just so long for its own good, But what stands out to me about this issue is just how like emotionally cathartic it is. Because like I mentioned, after like the Casey kills the dude arc, and after like all this other stuff that was kind of being seeded through, with the micro series and with the tales about like how they're all going their own ways. When you get to the beginning pages of City at War, they're all separate. You get that really great visual where it's like a window that's cracked, and you see them all on their own separate paths, and it's wonderful in that way, because it shows like how much the story has grown, that all these characters can sort of hold their own plot beat, hold their own plot lines, and like even though I don't really care that much about stuff like the Silver Samurai kind of guy or Nobody, who has like the worst name of all fucking time, to see like them all doing their thing and working as like toward like one central like story element is pretty great. And what always stands out to me about this arc, this final arc, is that we get like this huge through line about seeing this fight, this struggle from like the point of view of this random old guy, and like the last page of TMNT. If I said like what the last page of Turtles would be, you'd probably say like, oh, it's something to do with the turtle, maybe them like walking away all cool. Like, no, it's just like this old guy whose life was like upended by like these struggles of these like bigger than life characters finding some place new to live, some place more peaceful. And like that's great. And it always sticks out to me like as very kind of hearty as a very kind of hearty moment. But 13 issues, my God.
Yeah, and you mentioned you don't really like Jim Lawson's art that much.
I don't, not that I don't like it, but like after 13 issues, like I like Eastman. I think that he has like a really cool kind of like a blocky look to it. And I think that fits the characters so much more.
Mm. Yeah, I don't know why Eastman stopped doing art entirely. Like you see, he does it very, very little of it later on. So I don't really know if he felt it took too much of his time or something. I mean, probably that's probably it.
I mean, when you're raking into those millions, you got other problems, all right?
Yeah.
But like, any last words on Cindy at War?
Well, end of an era, we can say safely.
Yeah. Yes, they should not.
It was 1993, so the cartoon had like by far over. I mean, it had already overtaken years earlier, overtaken the original comic, and they had to like cancel all of these early merchandising deals that they had for the Mirage stuff, because nobody would buy the Mirage merchandise now because Ninja Turtles, that's for kids, because it's like action figures and cartoons and stuff like that. So yeah, at this point it was just toys and cartoons. That was basically it.
Yeah, and before we move on to our next topic, there was like multiple attempts to like keep the series going that never really lasted more than like a handful of issues. Like there was like a direct sequel run into this, like almost like immediately after, that just has fine stories, but just never had, none of them had staying power. I think that's why IDW was like such a big surprise for everybody. That's still going on, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. But yeah, no, and then that's probably like been the most successful second run of TMNT since the original, which is saying a lot. But let's move on to just talk about this very slightly. I want to talk about the movie and 2K3. We already talked about these already in parts because they're so indebted to Mirage. I think the most out of like all the adaptations. Like I know that they even something like 2K12 or Rise of the TMNT take vital elements from Mirage, but the movie and 2K3 are like the most faithful in parts. 2K3 like directly recreates the first pages of the first issue in like action and dialogue, which is incredible. But what are your just basic thoughts on like these adaptations? Prime.
I know I said this a lot on Twitter, and I don't catch a lot of flack for it, but I feel like the first Ninja Turtles movie is one of the most perfect comic book adaptations ever put to film.
Correct.
Because it captures a lot of the spirit of the original comic book, but it contemporizes it for the medium and the time it came out in. And like I will put that shoulder to shoulder as it's one of the greatest comic book movie adaptations, comic book movies of all time. Like I think I said earlier, the 2K3 cartoon, that is one of my definitive versions of the Ninja Turtles, even if it kind of fell off there toward the end with Fast Forward and Back to the Future. I still feel that it captures a lot of the spirit of both the Mirage and a lot of the stuff from Archie and the original cartoon. Like I feel like at the time it was the ultimate version of a Ninja Turtle universe, where it took bits and pieces of elements that worked in other adaptations, but then also brought in some new stuff, reconceptualized stuff. Like I remember waking up to watch like their version of City of War, and like just that huge scope and like what that story could be in the cartoon, and made me wish that the Ruby Spears cartoon had done something, or even attempted even a little bit of that. So whenever I try to get people like my nieces and nephews, or people ask me like, well, should I get into Ninja Turtles? I would always recommend the first 13 issues of the Mirage comic book. But like right behind that, I'm like, if you like that, then you definitely should check out the movie and 2K3 cartoon.
Fantastic. Judge?
I actually haven't seen them yet. I guess I should now.
Oh my god! Oh my god! And you sat here.
But I sat here.
You sat here while I sucked their dick and didn't say anything.
You were having too much fun. You were enjoying yourself.
Let's move on to a real fan.
But I do think,
No, go on.
however, that there's something interesting in there, which is that by 2003, they already had all these different versions of Turtles. They already had all these different fan bases. You had the people who were Mirage fans, who were movie fans, who were cartoon fans, and they'd all pretty much aged out. So there was no pressure to appeal to any of them. It wasn't like, oh, we only need to appeal to these. It was like, we have all these wealth of different takes, and it's like Upton said, what can we do to sort of take what are the best pieces of all these? What are all the elements that we can take and we can sort of change around to try to make something that's new, but that's also recognizable to all the different fan bases? And apparently they figured it out.
Yep.
All right, and we talked about this a little bit. I do want to set aside time for it. Now, 2K3, it ended with like this big capstone, like video movie finale, Turtles Forever, where even though we just said like, oh, it's one of the most faithful adaptations, they eventually decide to bring in the actual, for a given number of actual Mirage Turtles, because it's a multiverse spanning.
Spoiler alert, by the way, for a movie that's 20 years old.
And was on fucking basic cable as well.
Yeah.
It's a direct-to-video movie. Let me get an image of them up. I would have killed to gotten
unspoiled.
What you call it? No,
blind.
An adaptation with this.
Oh yeah, now art style with the animation, hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny because they're like always on the cusp of doing something really gritty, but like it always just kind of veers away at the last second. Like if anyone who knows like the issue, the one shot, the original first issue, like they're like about to kill Shredder in the most insane way, like just gutting him, and like they got interrupted, and I think that's really great. But no, it's a really fun series and it's a really fun film, and it was just nice to see these guys animated. And honestly, I don't really need the point of a faithful adaptation because 2K3 is the best of both worlds. Like it's not like where I would want it to be exactly, but like I know that the pull of the 80s cartoon is just too strong. You can't ever get away from that.
For better or for worse.
Is it though? Like, is it really?
People, studios seem to think so.
Yes, but here's the thing about the 87 cartoon. When people are nostalgic for it, what people tend to be nostalgic for are like the first miniseries that they call Season 1, and then maybe Season 2. They're like, oh yeah, it's that show where like the Technodrome is stuck in Dimension X. And that's just the first 2 seasons. Then there are like 7 more seasons after that, which nobody remembers.
I vaguely remember the last season because it was trying to stray and do some serious things. Like I think there was an episode where Michelangelo went to go talk to the boy that lost him as a kid.
Oh, Chester.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chester has an. I always thought like, did they ever bring Chester back in the comics in full? Do you remember Bullski?
I don't think so. I can't remember, but no, I don't think so.
Because he has a name, and it's like that's so weird that like they named him and like we never see him, and like there's one issue of like the guest era where like you see him like crying over like losing the turtles. I'm like, oh, they should be reunited. But no. But yeah, talking about like the overbearing nature of the 80s cartoon, I do want to bring up in passing the Bay Turtles movie. Because
Oh, I didn't I get to say anything about the 2003 era?
did you say something?
No, I didn't say anything.
Go
You skipped
ahead.
me.
I thought you said something.
Oh, I didn't. No, Judge went back and said something, and then.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
We
Oh
just
no,
wanted
it's
to get to Bay.
fine.
Go
We
So-
ahead.
just wanted to get to Michael Bay.
Basically, that era, what happened in the late 90s was that Kevin Eastman stepped away from Turtles. He was like, "Oh, I'm done with this. Like, I'm gonna go sleep on my giant pile of money now." And Peter
As he
Laird,
should.
as he should. Peter Laird stuck with the Turtles, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna start up my new era because they have like co-ownership." But Kevin Eastman was like, "Yeah, go ahead, dude, do what you want." So Peter Laird, he started up the Mirage comic again in 2001. That's I think they call it Volume 2 or something like that. It's mostly done by Jim Lawson. It came out very, very slowly. It started in 2001 and ended in 2014, at which point they had
As you
reached
do.
30 issues,
Wow.
which
As you
is not much. And in that comic, that's the comic where you find out that April is a drawing that came to life because her father lived in the same apartment where Jack Kirby lived and found his magic pencil, and he really wanted another daughter, so he drew himself a daughter. If you have not read that comic, please do. It's absolutely horrifying. It's like existential nightmare fuel.
To be fair, it does make sense as a sequel to that Don Taylor Micro series.
Yes, it does. It really ties back into that, and you can tell that Peter Laird is but it's really messed up. Like, it's really horrifying. It's not like a fun story at all. And at the same time, Peter Laird was also the executive producer and like the creative director of the 2003 series, because he was like, "I'm going to make a new cartoon, and I'm going to remake the cartoon the way I think would be best." Which
And
is why that,
Have you ever read the Ninja Turtles visual history? Because he makes a comment about that in that.
Yeah,
Because like
yeah.
they did not like that cartoon at all. Like they
As
they
should.
appreciate the money. They love the
Yeah.
money. But
they really disliked the Fred Wolf cartoon, and the Fred Wolf people. The thing was that the Mirage people kept sending stuff to the Fred Wolf people, and the people doing the 87 cartoon just said, "No, fuck you. We were doing our own stuff. We're doing our own stuff." Like, they ignored everything that Laird and Eastman wanted them to do. So there was really a lot of animosity between them as well. And when he did 2003, he was like, "I'm gonna do this right. Like, I'm gonna be in control now. I'm gonna be the auteur of this series."
he said, "I'm
and-
Ninja Turtles with strippers and beer."
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "I'm gonna adapt my comics that I drew and some of the comics that my buddies drew."
And
And,
everyone's
you
gonna
know,
be hot. Everyone's
gonna be hot and have abs, or whatever it is they say. But yeah, no. So it's the Peter Laird era, you could probably call that, because that's when he was really the driving force between Turtles, and as we see, it turned out really well, in my opinion. I mean, I really like that show as well. So
We bow before the king. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and we also got the that CGI movie that a lot of people I say are sleeping on. That's also a pretty good movie.
I don't know about that.
where
I'll
Which-
It's not
say-
terrible. It's
I'll
not
say
terrible.
I'll say one thing. It is a perfect encapsulation of all the issues of TMNT people didn't read.
it has Buffy the Vampire Slayer as April. It's Sarah Michelle Gellar as April, which is super random, and she becomes a ninja, which is also super random.
Because you gotta give the girl something to do, bro.
Yeah,
also,
she's
also Raph becomes Batman.
yes. Raph becomes Batman, and Leo goes off to South America or something. Like, man, there's stuff happening in that movie.
Peak Mirage weirdness, I'll say.
1000%.
Yes.
So the Stone Warriors, Terracotta Warriors, are evil, and they're trying to take over New York. It's ridiculous. I love it.
And Karai is in that movie for like 5 minutes, and she doesn't do anything.
Well,
Like-
she dick swings. She does dick swing.
Yes, the main evil millionaire is like, "Oh, I'm gonna hire the Foot Clan to find my statues for me," and Karai is like, "Yeah, you're an asshole," and he's like, "Yep, I know, but I have the money," and that's basically her entire thing in that movie. Like, oh, she allies with the turtles at the end, which is good.
Anyway,
Yeah.
if we said our piece about 2K3, I do want to make my point
Yes.
about Bait Turtles. All right, so Now we all know the controversy with William Fichtner and the Shredder. He was originally meant to play Shredder. Eric Sachs, you're gonna rename him, like a Rokusaki, Americanization. It's clear whitewashing. We can all say that. I will say one thing that I found really funny is that when they reshot the scenes in order to quickly add an Asian actor as the Shredder, they made the movie less faithful. Okay, so the movie, if you haven't seen it, I recommend it because it's not that bad. It's pretty fun. It's not good. It's fun. It's fun. I'll say it. It's fun, and it's the best Mythos's ever acted.
It is. First of all, that's a low bar. It's a very low bar. Second of all, I do agree with you. Like, I think the movie gets a lot of unnecessary shit. Like, it's not fucking Shakespeare.
No, it's not.
But it's not the worst action movie that exists.
It's good action, actually.
Yeah, like that snow. Is that the second movie with the snow scene? Or was that the first movie?
It's the first movie.
Yeah, that was actually a pretty good set piece.
All good set pieces. Okay, the building fight, the subway fight, the Shredder Splinter fight, the tower fight. It's so good. So many good fucking set pieces. What I'm trying to say, I'll let you finish first. Go on.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, like, you the word "good" is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
Yeah. I said fun. I said fun.
Oh, fun. The word "fun" is doing a lot of work there.
Okay, so we mentioned this in City at War. Is that like Karai is actually like a leader in the Foot Clan and not in like Shredder superior? So in the original issue, the original one shot, Shredder is just like this random upstart from the Foot Clan who moves to America to try to create his own rogue like version of the Foot Clan that only answers to him. Like he's like a young buck. And like no other version of Turtles does that. They always make like Shredder the head honcho. Except for the original cut of the Bay Turtles movie. And I say original cut because Eric Sachs, we have his backstory that's kept in the movie, was taken in by the Foot Clan, trained by the Foot Clan, and then came back to America. And he's trying to create his own Foot Clan in America. But because of the reshoots to make him not the Shredder, they cut out most of that motivation, and they make it less accurate to the Mirage comics in that way. And I thought it was pretty funny. Like, either keep the whitewashing and be more accurate and faithful, or cut out the whitewashing and be less accurate. It's like a weird choice, like two roads kind of choice. And I would have liked to have seen the original cut, But what say you? Because that Asian guy is only in the movie for like 5 seconds. He's only there to like.
We're not racist, guys. Totally not racist.
Before I get to the comments, I do want to say one last thing is that the sequel just goes full on 80s cartoon, and I hate it. So you see so many sequels to franchise films like this that are based on something where like the first movie will do something different, and the sequel like, oh, okay, people didn't like that different thing. Let's just overload and overdose on fan service.
Oh, that's the second Bay movie, all right.
Yeah, and you see it so many times. You see it so many times in films, based on stuff. And like, oh, I hate that. Stick with your guns. I was actually really excited. I want to see a sequel to the Bay Turtles movie, and like, oh no, it's just 80s wank. All right, but to order the comment, it seems like he has something to say. I got an idea for a different possibility. Say away.
There's a sequel to the Bay Turtles movie?
It is not worth watching at all.
No. The sequel is so much like CGI fighting that looks so bad. Like
fighting too. Bad
fighting.
Yeah,
bad CGI action sequences like that fight with Krang, where they're on the thing with the spinning shit. Like, I hate that scene.
I have only seen that movie. Yeah, I've only seen that movie once, and I'm good.
Yeah.
All right.
I think in the earliest script for the first movie as well, the Shredder was called like Colonel Schrader or something like that.
Yeah, that was the original draft they cut
where he was gonna be like a spec ops. Yeah, they were gonna be aliens, and he was gonna be like a spec ops guy or something, like a black ops guy, Colonel Schrader.
That is a fucking parody.
Anyway, Now we can go on to the main fucking event. All right, we're over the backstory. Let's go to the fucking Last Ronin. Let's get on this Last Ronin. Okay, so to give some backstory, Comrade, give us the backstory of this. Just a slight one. We'll get into more detail later, but give us the backstory.
Right. So what basically happened in, I think, oh god, what was it? Was it 2010 or 2011? Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird decided that they were done permanently with the Turtles, and they sold the entire property, all of their shares, to Viacom, Nickelodeon, but Viacom. So they sold everything, like all of the rights to the comics, all of that stuff. And Viacom did a reboot series, that CGI series that we usually call Turtles 2012 or something like that. And at the same time, they also launched the IDW comic, which is still running to this day. And this time it was Kevin Eastman who stepped in and has been sort of like the grandfather figure of that comic, but he's always been working with a co-writer, and he's never really done the art. I mean, he does covers and stuff. And that comic just took everything in a totally new direction, but it's still in the vein of the 2003 series, so they're remixing stuff from the Mirage comic, they're bringing in stuff from the cartoon, the Archie comic, the movies, all of that stuff. And that's pretty much where we still are at with the Ninja Turtles to this day. It's owned by Nickelodeon, Viacom, and IDW is doing new comics in a new canon.
So I'm taking a little bit of snack break. We're coming a long time.
Okay, so The Last Ronin, it's a miniseries from IDW. It takes place in. Okay, so this is a bit like this is a bit of a detail. This is a bit anal, really. It's a 5-issue miniseries. It takes place in the IDW continuity, but really. Yes, it does. Absolutely does.
Okay,
there are a lot.
I don't know. I feel like it's a Dark Knight Returns kind of situation.
I wanted to save that. I wanted to save that discussion for after we talk about it.
But there are things. Okay, but I'll say this: there are things in it that are not compatible with the Mirage.
That's what I wanted to say too. Like, okay, so like, all right.
But
so,
officially, this is a part of the IDW comic. If you read the preview, I don't believe that it's a revamp of a story idea that Eastman and Laird had back in the 80s of like a final story for the Turtles. But it's definitely it's as I said, as me and Elvis discussed before we started this, we think they made up a lot of the backstory for this. We think they pretty much just made up a lot of the story on the spot, basically. Yeah. So yeah.
All right, so like let's take this at a time, because I do want to get into that. Now, while there has been some inconsistency, the fact that they keep promoting this as 30 years ago, back in the 80s, they created this vision for a final Tmnt story. So that, to me, at least, is like this is meant to be like the end of the original continuity. Like so there are inconsistencies. I want to get into that because I don't like this miniseries that much at all. I do not, and because of those inconsistencies. But like to me, it's like, okay, this is like the final hurrah for this creative team for their vision of this series, and we get like a pitch in director's cut. We'll get into that later. What I want to say is, did you guys like this? What parts stood out to you? And do you think this is a good final story for the OG version of the Turtles? We'll get into the IDW stuff after this, but OG Turtles. Prime.
All right, so I think I might have liked it a lot more than you all probably may have. I thought it was fine because going in, like I said, I was looking at like a Dark Knight Returns kind of situation. It was like a what could be or what could possibly be, especially when I got to like I think the third or fourth issue, I was like, I don't really think this is the Mirage continuity. And I was like, I also don't really think this is the IDW continuity. But when I first heard it was announced, what really got my attention was that it was Eastman and Laird. Because if you haven't read the visual history of Ninja Turtles, I recommend you read that because it's actually a very detailed book about the history of the founding. But I also feel like in that book, there are some things that weren't said. There are some things that you can see between the lines. Like I think they had a pretty notable falling out. And like they were both pretty much done with each other. And you get that sense from that history book. So when I found out that they were doing this together, I said, "Oh, I'm reading this, whatever the fuck it is. I'm gonna get every fucking issue and read it. And so hearing like the initial pitch about the dystopian future and there's only one Ninja Turtle left, I thought, okay, so they're gonna do their, this is gonna be their last hurrah. And like I said, going in, my expectation was just I'm gonna see these two creators bring their vision to like their own clothes. Like if there are gonna be no more Ninja Turtle comic books, this gonna be their last stand. Like what would be their last statement? And I want to say they did an all right job. I thought it was pretty fine. But what really just took me away about the comic book was the comic bookiness of it. I know it's gonna sound pretty stupid, but the way they use the medium to tell the story with the flashbacks and with them like realizing that, comics is a visual medium and how they, told the story with the environments and with the characters and there weren't like, fucking text boxes everywhere. It was just refreshing to see two masters at the craft at work just doing that stuff.
Well, I have to say that's what took me out of it in the bad way, because going into this, I'm like, okay, this is Eastman and Laird, and even in the issues that Eastman like did or co-wrote heavily or did the art for in IDW that I read, he still has like that really kind of blocky, that really kind of blunt, like instrument kind of mentality with this series, and I really enjoyed it. I think that's like one of the pure beating heart at Mirage, And then I read this, and it's like a regular comic, like, oh, okay, it has no passion, it has no rawness. It's just like, oh, this art looks like it could be any kind of art. All right, and then it puts salt in the wound when we get to those flashbacks, those Eastman flashbacks, because they just capture like that looks like that pure energy that is at the heart of Mirage, and then you just that was only 5 pages. I wanted more of that. Why isn't Eastman doing the entire issue, the entire series? And like it's a bit of a disappointment. And I started feeling like like after like issue 3, like this is a bait and switch, like this is not like these two doing what they do best. This is just another IDW miniseries. And like there's stuff I liked. Like I said, I do like the flashbacks. I like the idea of like there being one last turtle who is trying to like encapsulate all of them. He's trying to like I do like the way the first issue started, where he's just so dead set. It brings you right back to that Mirage issue 1 roots, where you get like someone who only cares about the mission. The turtles got so much personality later on, but in the first issue, they're just instruments of death. And like that, and I feel like doing that whole like circular thing was awesome, and just the rest of it just felt so totally different that it just took me out of it. But I do like how it ended, and we'll get to how it ended later. But overall, like it's on the skin of its teeth. What about you, Bullski? As like the ending.
Are we talking about the ending or the entire series, or what?
Overall, we'll save the ending itself for like a little bit after.
Overall, I have sort of forgotten that this series existed because it started in 2020 and the last issue only came out like now, like a week ago or something like that, or a month ago. Like it ran for 2 years or something like that, which was forever. But yeah, it's a dystopian future. There's only one turtle left alive. I feel like I've seen that many times before. The Ninja Turtles always have like a dystopian future ahead of them for some reason. I think I forget the name of the people who did the art. It's like 2 guys, I think.
I'll pull that right up. Yeah, the 2 guys.
Esau and Isaac Escorza or Escorza.
What happened was that the Last Ronin, the first artist on it, had like issues, and they had to change him. And the art change is so minimal. Like I'll pull it up right now. I'll just cast it. And like I don't know. Like at no point, it just saddens me that at no point was Eastman doing the art ever considered. It seems like
no. I don't think so either.
So disappointing.
It's I wasn't super into this series. I'll be honest. I thought it was just like it didn't have that raw feel of the Mirage series. It didn't feel like an apocalyptic ending to the series. I don't know. It was just sort of another Ninja Turtles alternate universe story for me. It did not have that feeling of like the big capstone to the entire saga.
All right. Yeah, that's the main sticking point. But I have to say, like, the thing that took me is that the elements were there. Like I'm gonna pull up some of these designs because the elements were there. All the ideas that they had, for this character, for these stories, for the elements at play, are pure Mirage. Like, oh, let's have Karai's son, and he's like this ultra techno shredder, and like this, just the way it felt very pop 80s cool kind of thing, and like under like more capable, more understanding artists. I'll say, I don't want to say capable because like I don't want to say like no one here knew what they were doing. That would be like a bit of a what you call it?
It's a dick move.
Dick move, yeah.
Yeah.
A disservice.
This service for
Yes.
sure. But it's just, again, you need to be in the same kind of headspace as two like 6-year-old guys who think that like Blade Runner and Neuromancer is still like the height of like being really, really on the edge of a hipness, and not just like translating that to regular comic art. You have to have the blockiness. You have to have like a sense of corniness. And so when I see the original designs for like Karai's son, the villain, I'm like, there's none of this energy in the comic itself for this character. When you see the character in the comic with the regular art, it's just like a bland, stereotypical comic villain. Well, here you get like a little bit more, again, cornballiness, cheesiness. And I love the flashbacks for bringing that energy in that we don't see throughout the rest of the 4 issues. And you see that a lot. And you know what? Let's just get into it. The ending.
So I did want to mention something about like general opinion of the Last Ronin. Probably gonna go into the ending here. My thing about IDW Turtles, the thing that I love about it is that it could easily have been the Eastman show or the Eastman and Laird show. It could easily have been just, let's go do the same thing and whatever. But they purposefully seem to have gone for no. Let's bring in some new guys. Let's bring in new artists, new writers. Let's bring in, Tom Waltz, Sophie Campbell. Let's bring all these cool people who grew up with turtles or who know turtles and who want to do new things with them. And let's, like hell, the first volume is called The Only Constant is Change, something like that, right? Like IDW Turtles, to me, what spoke to me was that kind of, these are all the things but we're going to inject them with some new blood in it. And that's why The Last Ronin really doesn't work for me, because it's an entire book about how old people are cool and new people suck unless they think that old people are cool, in which case they can be cool too.
I wish it was more like that. The thing is, right, it's so flip-floppy. You don't really, again, it's so flip-floppy with like what it's going for.
I have one particular example. We'll get to that once we talk about spoilers.
All right, no problem. We're going to spoil this really soon. I just want to show like just how distinct it is when you go to like the flashbacks. Like, it is night and day, man. It is night and day. I don't care if this makes like an old curmudgeon, but like, I don't know. Like, there's nothing in the comic that looks this vibrant.
I would agree. If I had a choice, I would have wished the whole comic book looked like the flashback. But that probably might not have sold to, these newfangled comic book reading audiences.
But the question is that really what you want, though?
Yes,
If this is supposed to be the final hurrah of the Mirage, like this epic that Eastman has been building up to for 30, 40 years now, does it really matter if it sells to new readers? Because, I mean, couldn't he just go full in on the weirdness, like, and just make it a Mirage series? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I wish I mean, because that's who it was for. Because like the people who are reading the IDW book, I'm pretty sure they're not going to give a shit about Eastman and Laird doing the finale to their series. So yeah.
Yeah, it was totally sold on the basis of being by these two guys, and it ended up not really fulfilling that promise most of the time. Which is a shame.
And we should also probably point out at this point that even though Peter Laird's name is in the credits, he had very, very, very little to do with this comic, actually. He had a little bit of story input, but he has not actually worked on this comic. This is in 90%, 99.9%, this is a Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz writing comic, and the art is by those other two guys. Peter Laird he's just there to have his name on it, basically.
Yeah, they mention in like the director's cut of the first issue, in the afterword, that they took the original pitch, which I'll cast the original pitch in just a second. And then they like, hey, Peter Laird, is it okay if we use this original pitch to make a miniseries out of it? And you're like, okay. And that's the amount of his involvement. But I will say, to their credit, even though I'm not a big fan of The Last Ronin as it stands, what happened was that they actually at least take a lot from that original pitch, as slight as it is. So let me just pull it up right now, and then we'll just talk about how it ends, because I feel like we're going to be running around in circles. Because like Last Ronin, let me just recap the story of Last Ronin. It's that, all right, so all of the kind of main heroes at some certain point in time, in some undisclosed way, have died, and we don't really get the context or background. Even after it's explained, there's not really that much context or background on what happened and why.
Wait, what?
I don't think so.
Here's the thing. I actually just read it, so here's the problem. They show you context about how they died,
but not why.
But there's one inciting incident that they never show, which is that they say, "Oh well, the Foot Clan and we reached a truce, and at some point the truce was broken, and they never really specify when."
That's the story.
How.
Shredder's grandkid was like, "Hey, fuck those turtles! I'm gonna break the truce because like they killed my dad. They killed my granddad."
Yeah, but they actually show that, and that was after the truce was broken, because Shredder's grandson comes on and say, "Hey, there's been enough bloodshed. Let's broker for peace." And then he betrays them.
He was lying.
But by then, the truce,
he wanted to bring them there.
No, but
he sent his crew to kill. She summoned Splinter, because I think his thing was he wanted to gloat to him that he killed his sons while he was away.
Right, and by then the truce had already been broken.
That was the incident that broke the truce. Like, he was lying about the truce. He's like, "You guys come, let's have a parlay here."
Yeah, but before that,
get here, he's like, he said, "Psych," because there was gonna be no parlay, because I'm here to kill you, motherfuckers.
Yeah, but before that, there was a whole scene with Raphael and Karai having the fight, and then getting killed. Oh god, it's Pulp Fiction all over again.
No, my main problem is that there's so much. We get context to like the what happened to each individual character, but it comes in such a way where like, what's the context to this context? It feels like such odds and ends with both what happened in IDW and also what happened in Mirage. Where like, how did they even get to this point where they're doing the stuff they did in the flashbacks? And that's what I like about this pitch, which we have right here, which is supposedly like the original pitch document that they use as a basis, where everything is the Last Ronin is a mystery. The first issue is a mystery of who is the Last Ronin, and then the rest is a mystery of like what happened to take Mikey to this point and what broke him. Yeah,
and you're supposed, in the first issue, you're also supposed to think, oh, it's Raph, obviously, because you see him using the Psy all the time, and Raph is always the lone wolf of them, and then surprise, it's Mikey.
Oh yeah, but meanwhile in the original pitch, it's not really a mystery, and everything is given proper context and development and all that stuff, and even get like stuff where like Casey and April did get together, but in the future they divorced because Casey's a wild animal and unhinged. Like, oh, that makes a lot more sense than just, okay, it's some sort of mishmash of like IDW with like some of the cartoons where like, okay, they're in a relationship and they have a kid, and like it doesn't. I don't really buy it. And again, this is because they sold it as like this return, but it's not really. It's like this whole entirely different continuity in basis. And reading this pitch document, like, okay, at a certain point, this had more sense to it that they kind of ripped out, you know?
Now, I might be the weird man out here, but one thing that I wouldn't mind seeing is they kind of hint at it, but they don't show it. Like, I want to see Michelangelo's spiritual journey there. Like, how did he physically, and I'm like, well, how did he get to that point where he wanted to go on the long man? Because like they hint at it in like the flashbacks a little bit, where he said he goes off to the coldness to die, but he just doesn't die.
Yeah.
Then those hunters come to kill him, and he's like said he's just gonna like just lie there and take it. But then something snaps in it, and I'm assuming he kills the hunters, right? Did I read that right?
Pretty sure, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So he kills him. And he goes off and wanders, and he said he gets the skills and trains and does whatever he does to need that. But I'm kind of greedy. I'm kind of selfish. Like, can I see that process? Can I see how he got there?
And it's those things that like make this a less of an impactful story. And again, that's all those things. So like that's why like the pitch document, which there's 2 pages of, and it cuts off really abruptly, so we don't even get the full pitch document. I want to see how much of the story was different. Hopefully in the collected edition they provide the entire thing, because there's clearly more. It cuts off mid-sentence. They have like a lot of the set pieces here. They have the set piece where Splinter and Donatello, they go back to Japan, and something happens and they go missing and they never heard from again, presumed dead, or the stuff where like Raph has a huge falling out, or the fight at second time around. All these things happen. April having Fugitoid's head, and that becomes a big plot element. All these are from those first 2 pages of the pitch. And so that's probably why Laird has like that big co-credit, because they did, at the very least, repurpose a lot of these set pieces they developed together, which I like. I think, again, the plot elements are there for something really Mirage-y. They just don't come together that well. But I have to say, let's just get right to it. I don't know. The final issue, I think, is really great. I love it. 8 out of 10. It could have been a 10 out of 10, but things keep me from giving it that much. But it would have been, because it is really fun. It is the most Mirage-esque the entire series gets. And I think that in a really capable, very genuine way. Because while the rest of the series has been like a very kind of very standard comic book feel to it, what we get with the final issue is a story that is directly like a parallel of the first issue. And I know that might not be like a big boon for some, but I enjoy it. I love it when series go circular in a way. Like you saw Hellboy as well, that had a circular ending. And I'm glad that this has that as well. It always feels more whole to me. So you get like this, like the first issue of Tmnt ever is them preparing and having this long drawn out fight with the Shredder. And the last issue of this canon, as it were, is that again. And I love it. Eastman is on perfect form with the writing here. His co-writing at least. Because it's just nothing but like really blocky, really blunt, really like simple but like passionate, like angry writing, angry dialogue, angry narration, and it's perfect. I love it. What are your thoughts on it, Prime?
When I first finished reading it, like again, like I said, I think I'm different here. Like I like the series overall. But when I read the last issue, my first read through, I was kind of like, I liked it, but I didn't love it, and I went in wanting to love it. I just thought it was okay. But now that I've had time to sit with it and think about it, like I'm kind of agreeing with you, like that all stories begin at the end. That circling, like it's there was no other way for the story to end, so that just made sense. And I think my initial reaction to not liking it was that weird ass epilogue they could have kept to themselves.
We'll get to that. We'll
get there.
But yeah, overall, like I thought, very, very good ending. I thought it was a very, very strong, solid ending to what they had set up. I don't want to say they knocked it out of a park, but they got it. They accomplished what they set out. I felt they accomplished what they set out to do.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like, I don't want like this is where the art really comes in for me, because like the rest of this series, like you get like really standard pages, like pages you wouldn't see any like out of like a certain like any kind of random comic. But then like because it's like an action focused issue, like every panel just hits, you know, like it doesn't have to be Eastman art. It just has that Eastman kind of energy of action. Everything follows through. The character forms have flow and motion. I'm in it. Like this is all it needs to be for me. Like just one single kind of like experience. And I think Michelangelo looks really cool in this.
Yeah, that fight between him and Hiroto is so fucking dope.
Yeah, I any page I can pull out, and this is where we get like Hiroto's final form, and it is just like pure, simple cheeseball Mirage. You know, like this is like what old men think is cool, kind of thing I was talking about. Like this is he has T9 he has a T900 T1000 armor on.
Yeah,
and it's so stripped down, so simple. You could imagine it like as Eastman art, but you don't need to because it has that simple quality.
But Elvis, can we talk about like the concept art for him, where Eastman gives his notes from the director's cut, because it really encapsulates everything you say about that. Have you read that?
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now.
So here's what Eastman has to say about this, the main opponent of this series, the grandson of the Shredder.
Calls him emo, right?
Super angry guy, totally on edge all the time, on the edge all the time. Talks to mom, argues with her, she's in a coma. Think of him like a Bullseye style character. Okay, so everything is a weapon. You don't see that ever in the comic, I don't think. Like, he has that armor, but I don't think he picks up like random objects and makes them weapons, because he says that, oh, he takes stuff from a toolbox and makes it a weapon. I don't think you see that.
No, he calls him goth and emo though.
Yeah, he calls him a fetish rock star, really long legs, and then shit ran out of room at the end because he ran out of room to draw. And then at the bottom here, he's written, he is kind of over the top crazy. Could have his shirt off several times, lots of tattoos. And that's what Kevin Eastman thinks is cool in 2022.
And that's why I love.
Amazing.
That's why I love.
Amazing. Amazing.
It's so
he's
good.
Not wrong.
He's not wrong. It's the essence of TMNT. Like all of those notes, that's like the original series in a nutshell.
And I really hope Playmates makes a Final Form Hiroto toy. I really do.
Yeah.
Vacuum. What's the process they call?
Vac metal.
Something.
Yeah, vac metal.
For just shiny as fuck.
And also when he talks about when he in his concept art for Casey, April's daughter with Casey Jones, who becomes a major character in this, who we haven't talked about. Eastman says that she's like the Crow. You know, probably the movie. I would assume the movie, but yeah, you can tell what kind of era he's in when in his headspace.
Like, hey, Comrade, I got a question. So, Comrade, is this Shredder like Kylo Ren? Yes.
No.
I gotta say yes.
Is he really?
I mean, he's got mommy issues off the wazoo.
He kills his parent. Like really randomly.
Poor Karai. She gets dirty.
Yeah, she's in a tube this entire series. She's in a fucking tube, and he talks to her, and then it's like, oh, I don't care about her actually, and then he just stabs her. Like, okay, that was a good use.
Cool story.
Again, less and less agency every time she shows up.
Yes, I mean she kills Raphael in this series, but like, yeah, then she goes in a tube forever.
Yeah, in the original pitch, she seems like to have more of like a role. And again, I want to see that full original pitch because there's more pages, and it would be a shame if they didn't release them. All right. Yeah.
My thing about Hiroto, my problem with him, it goes back to what I said about the problem, which is like, on one hand, it's cool that the final bad guy is not Shredder, and it's not Karai, and it's not anyone from the old days. It's this dude. But on the other hand, it's like, what's the worst thing that you can imagine for a villain? Oh, it's this kid who's disrespectful and shitty and has no honor and is kind of an asshole. Hates his dad and his mom, and it's like, what kind of boomer ass power fantasy is this?
No, to be fair, that is a very standard trope.
Yes.
Like that, like you see it all the time where, like, you know. And I like it a lot, but only when done in a specific way, where it's to show like at a certain point, the heroes have gone like so out of practice or inept enough, or just weren't expecting like a nothing kind of burger of a person to be this like efficient and I think that I think Hiroto does kind of toe the line there, where
And
like
here's
if it wasn't for this final issue where he's like actually
Yeah.
pretty cool, it would have been like really disappointing.
Yeah,
my other problem with Hiroto is that I think it's kind of a missed chance, missed opportunity there at the end, because issue 5, the last issue, it starts with this very violent scene, but kind of important scene where Mikey just says, "Hey, all these voices, shut the fuck up. I want you gone." And kind of like the message is, look, you can't free yourself. You can't have others free you from your past. You need to decide to stop listening to it. And Hiroto is also haunted by the past because he wants to show, his granddaughter. He wants to show Karai. He wants to show everyone that he's like, I'm not just a bastard son. I can be bigger and better than all of you. And there's a part in the last issue when he smashes Karai's tube, and he's talking about, oh, I never actually liked you. I just wanted to show you that I'm better. And Mike says something like, at least Karai had honor, which is dumb as fuck. Because back in issue 2, we saw that Karai did the same thing that Hiroto did to Raphael. Then she sent a bunch of goons to wear him down, and then only went and tried to kill him at the very end. And the thing is, that could have been a cool moment. Like saying to Hiroto, hey, you're not actually better than the old people. You're not actually a better fighter or a better warrior. You're using the same things, but with a shiny new coat on top. Neither of us is actually better than any of our previous elders because we're still having this dumb blood feud that has been going on for ages and ages. None of us have really become better than our parents. And
I don't
they
know, man.
didn't really do anything with that because they just says, no, actually, I'm going to kill you.
I disagree with that a little bit because Mikey's last words show that like he knew it was too late for him. Like he's like, Casey, like, dude, you don't want to be trained like this. Like, this is the only word you need. Don't fucking use the rest of the book. And that's why I hate the epilogue so much. Because
Which one? There's two.
There's two. But
there's no two epilogues. So let's not say that.
Can I say something first when we're talking about Hiroto?
Yeah.
So something that I don't like about this issue, about the general plot of this issue, is that this is one of those stories where the villain manages to conquer the world because the heroes don't do anything. And it really sort of conceptualizes that this entire world is just about the Ninja Turtles. And that's something that I always find to be, like, they do that in Turtles Forever as well, where they're like, oh yeah, wherever the Shredder, like, in all the multiverse, there's always going to be like a Shredder and a Ninja Turtles. And I'm like, because what I like about the Mirage series the best is that it feels like the Turtles just sort of exist in this world. They're not like the focus of it. They just sort of stumble around. They stumble into weird alien stuff, and they stumble into stuff with the Shredder because he murdered their teacher. Well, their sort of teacher. But in this story, it turns out that the Foot can just conquer the world if the Turtles don't exist. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just Hiroto doesn't seem competent enough either because he's like a total fucking psycho.
Yeah.
So I really don't see, like, even he's got Baxter Stockman with him who builds Mousers, but I'm like, okay, so he managed to conquer the world. Like, okay. I don't like that. I think it should have been smaller scale in that sense, and not just been about like,
did I misread? I thought he just controlled New York.
I thought he controlled New York.
Yeah, he controls the U.S. or something like that.
Really?
Oh shit!
I missed that. I missed that.
But doesn't he? Like, doesn't it say that he can, like, he's taken over the government or something like that?
I mean, it might have been. I don't know. I just thought it was New York.
Because like Mikey has to sneak into New York, so I always just thought it was.
Oh yeah. Oh, maybe it's a John Carpenter thing, like his Escape from New York thing.
Yeah, I got the bit again, very 80s, and which I like. Again, I like plot elements, and they just don't come together enough for me consistently.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the epilogue. All right, but first, I do want to like cast one other thing. Let me see. All right, because like I do like where this leaves Mikey. Like I think it was a pretty nice choice to make him like the Last Ronin. Like, and they've done this kind of story before, like he said, I do like that Mikey has like this. I think it's coolest to do with Mikey because we have such a preconceived notion. He was the turtle that saved Christmas, all that kind of stuff. He's a weeaboo. He's a weeaboo. He's all around fun guy. So I think it really meant a lot more to see him become the Last Ronin, and also try to like make an impact of positivity. And so I really like where this ends, and like it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I agree.
I don't count the dying dream as an epilogue. I don't know. You guys are crazy.
There are two.
That's the one I don't mind because I'm like, let him have his happy ending. I'm fine.
There are two There's a mid-credit scene and there's a post-credit scene. And the mid-credit scene is that Mikey is dreaming that he's back with the turtles again in the sewer and everything is happy, which is something that they've done before. This has happened in comics before. In the 80s, when you saw the future turtles, they also have that kind of thing. That's nothing out of the ordinary and not offensive. But then,
that one's fine.
Then the post-credit scene comes along.
It's disgusting. It is
like, what the fuck? Did you just completely ignore what he just fucking told you in his dying breath?
Right, like Mikey's like, we especially if you take into account Mirage, where a lot of it's like, what happened to the turtles is tragic. Like on all sorts of levels. That's the thing that the Mirage run hammers into this at different times. And then even Michael's last word is like, don't let this happen again. And what Casey and Casey Jr. and April do is like, let's just abuse these poor innocent animals. And that's meant to be very hearty.
Like,
no.
That's supposed to be uplifting? Like, what the fuck?
They're abusing these animals, these poor little turtles.
Like, it goes back a little to what Bullski said, which is that, you know, this kind of message of, well, there's always going to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it's like, it doesn't have to.
Or if you want to do something, I brought something to Bullski. If you want to do something like that, then the fact that Casey is a mutant, you can just run with that. Like, okay, now she's a mutant hero. And she could be leading a vanguard of like other humans or other animals that have been mutated because of like the mutagen that was in New York. Like that must have affected other people other than her, because TCRI was like a giant corporation. So you could have done something like that, and then you're like, okay, they're continuing the spirit of being heroes who are mutated, fun, but not just literally abusing poor little turtles.
Let's just do it again. Like this is the circular thing, but done bad. Like no,
we have to start the cycle all over again. Like we're just gonna start all this shit over again.
You don't need those pages. The issue is long enough, man.
Right. You can just stop reading after Mikey closes his eyes. You're good. You're fine.
But yeah, so let's go back to the elephant in the room. Comrade, you said this lines up more for IDW. Let's see.
Well, does it though? Like it's definitely its own continuity, but there are things in this series that are not compatible with the Mirage series, even just the Eastman and Laird issues. It's some sort of weird halfway point, and I don't know what to think about that. I think it should have been pure Mirage, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think, Elvis?
I think that it is a halfway point. Like I said, I felt like it was bait and switch. Now, the TMT franchise is a victim of its own success. So like, there's so many things that I can understand a little bit of a retconning. I mean, like the Mirage run itself, we've gone through all those issues. It wasn't the most consistent at all either. Maybe within like what Eastman and Laird did together, consistent as hell. But like as a whole run, not that consistent. So I can withstand a little bit of some what you call it, retconning, like I said. But like we're around like issue 3 or 2, we get like the non-Eastman flashback, and it's just like pure IDW artwork as like the Young Turtles. I'm like, no, my God, I've been tricked. And they consistently have the colored bandanas in the flashbacks as well, just to make you remember that this isn't the Mirage. Like they always have the purple, blue, and such bandanas. Yeah, but mostly, like I said, I enjoy it. Overall, I think the last issue does a lot of the heavy work. The flashbacks do a lot of heavy work. I can accept this as an ending to Mirage, or at least and ending to something Mirage-like. But overall, like it's not really where I liked it to be. And I don't think that anything really puts more of a point on it than Today awarded.
Yeah, and I mean, is Karai Shredder's daughter in this? I mean,
Yes.
yeah, which is probably the big one, like the big
Mm.
continuity breaker in this one. Because yeah, he says like, "Oh, it's my grandfather, like Rokusaki," and you're like, "Wait, what?" Like, no, but Karai in the Mirage series, she wasn't related to Shredder, and then you just realize, oh, it's a hybrid continuity.
So what about you,
Yeah.
Prime? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's its own thing. I feel like there are things that they cherry pick from Mirage and from IDW, but I feel like it can serve as either work, because like you don't have to know anything about those continuities going into this. I think it serves pretty well to be a standalone on its own, especially for people who may not have read those comic books or people who are just general Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans. So I think it could exist as like you can pick a continuity and say this is my endpoint for that Turtles. I think it serves well enough for that, because it leaves a lot of things just vague enough. And there are callbacks, like there are callbacks one way or another. If you want to tie to it, you can. But like I said, going in, I went to this like this is just Dark Knight Returns. This is its own. What if this is an ending to a Ninja Turtles?
Yeah,
Definitely.
Yeah, I feel like in a way it's not like this is the end of the Mirage continuity, but it's sort of like an end to the Mirage feel almost, like an attempt to see this would be the end of what someone who read Mirage back in the day and then never again sort of remembers it was like that kind of visceral, weighty, punchy action, constant action movie feel, especially in the last issue.
Definitely.
and I think what Elvis said near the start as well, I think that's really the best way to look at it. It's the Dark Knight Returns for the Ninja Turtles. And as we know, Dark Knight Returns isn't really in canon with any other version of Batman, like other than Frank Miller's other works. So it's not like the ending of the Bronze Age Batman or anything like that. It's the ending of the Frank Miller Batman.
Yeah.
So I mean that's what this is. This is the ending of Kevin Eastman's Ninja Turtles, but
Yeah.
not necessarily any specific canon.
That said, my God, I'm gonna miss Mikey. This version of Mikey. I'm sorry. He should have lived.
I think there's actually something that's really nice about this series concept, which is that I think that with just sure, it works best with Mikey, but with just a little bit of rejiggering, you could pretty much tell this story with any turtle, and each one would bring something different. Like if
Yeah.
you did it with Leonardo, he'd be angsting that he wasn't a good enough leader. If you did it with Raphael, he would be angsting that he was too much of a lone wolf and too much of a hunthead. If you did it with Donatello, you could make it about him being too self-absorbed and too easy to isolate. And each one would have its own character arc. And I think that speaks to how solid all these characters are. That this story could work with each one, and it could go in slightly different directions character-wise. But it works best with Mikey, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the reason that they used Mikey for this is that I don't think they actually have used Mikey that much for it in the past.
Yeah.
They have done other stories like this. There was a short for the 2012 cartoon, like one of those anthology shorts. And I think that was like Donatello leading a team of like kid mech pilots in the future or something like that.
That was Michelangelo.
That was Michelangelo. Okay, so they did use Michelangelo. Because, yeah, I know there's also some comics in the past where it's Raphael who's the last turtle and stuff like that.
There was a story where Donatello was one, I think.
Yeah.
It was in 2012.
Yeah,
Am I
they
mistaken?
had like when 2012 got canceled prematurely a little bit, they did like this whole arc where they're old and sad and dying.
Yep.
And then there was one where Raphael was like a Mad Max style kind of world.
Yep. That's the after the bomb thing. They almost never use Leonardo for it.
And Casey always dies.
Casey always dies. In that 2012 episode, they have like Casey's skull.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've seen that one. That's a CGI cartoon aimed at little kids, I want to say. This is like that's a kid show. Like we're not even talking all ages. And they're like, oh yeah, here's Casey Jones's skull, which is wired to an atomic bomb or something like that. Unless I
Good,
remember.
because he was annoying. I hate that.
Yeah, maybe that was it.
But yeah, no. Overall, I gotta say, 8 out of 10. I will reread it. I think that with time, I'll enjoy this more and more. But like initially, like I was just not into it. But I don't know. It's got charm. What guys? Last results. Last ratings.
I think I agree with you. It's an 8 out of 10. I can't wait to read the collected trade. I already have it pre-ordered. I didn't read the director's cut issue, so I'm curious to see if it'll include any content from that. It's fine. If you're a fan of the Turtles, I would say it's out. I don't know. Give me a couple of months. I don't know if I'll call it recommended reading, but right now it's worth a look for right now.
How about you?
I would recommend reading it. Like I think it's a fun read. I personally don't like it just because I don't like the last word on TMNT to be old people rule, young people drool. Like, I think that's a shitty thing to do in general. Like it's
To be fair, she says, "Fuck the old man."
Or like maybe that we have to restart everything from the beginning because that's like the best status quo. We have to get 4 new turtles. Is that a good message, Judge?
And completely ignore your sensei's last words and he told you to
exactly.
Live a peaceful life. No.
The dude is dying. He's dying and he's giving you his last words and it's like, don't do this again. Like, Jesus Christ.
Let's just do it again.
Can we bully IDW to not collect those pages?
Can we bully them?
Can we ask them? Yeah, like, hey, when you start recollecting the story, just don't include that epilogue. Just leave it out. It's fine. It's okay.
We need a director's cut with less pages.
Yeah.
We need a theatrical cut.
Collect those pages, but like put them in like the bonus material.
Yeah, like, oh, this is the alternate ending that never made it to print, and let's just pretend it didn't.
Deleted scene, never happened. We don't talk about it.
Don't think about it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining. I have to say, one last thing. I'm totally getting the Michelangelo toy from Playmates.
Whoever does it, I'm getting it. Yeah.
Which is a very reused mold. It's not like unique or anything. So it's basically just one of the regular turtle toys with like a few extra bits.
But this
on brand for Playmates, though.
Which is very on brand for Playmates.
That gives it that sauce, though, don't you think? I'm gonna put a picture right now. And last picture, we're gonna pull it up right here.
But if this was gonna be like the real Last Ronin, if you look at the back end of the director's cut where they show like how Michelangelo looks after when he becomes the Last Ronin, they show that he's like now like a head larger and like twice as broad as the turtles were back in the day. So he should be a big figure. Like he should be big and bulky. Like when you look at that lineup, but here he's just like a regular guy.
Oh, we got another comment from Stories. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad we got someone commenting. It was awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. But
hooray!
Thanks for being here.
I think the NECA is going to scale a lot more easily with other Turtles figures, so that's gonna be fun.
Oh, now I will say this: in the comic, they make a mention that the mutagen that's what kept Michelangelo alive because he just kept mutating. So if he had lived longer, like what would have happened?
He would have said no to the animal beast.
He could have turned into a dinosaur like they did in the cartoon when they got like double mutated or something. I don't know.
All right. So it's let's kind of roll out and give us your ads, your links, and all that. Prime.
I am on Twitter and Instagram at Prime Gundam, where I post random pictures from my collection, sprinkled in with some pictures of my cats. And on Twitter, I am doing a victory lap dance about recently canceled TV shows.
Yay. Judge?
Die, CW, die.
Oh no. Now we're going to get canceled.
Not as hard as the CW.
All right, we're having a good fun. Come on, Judge, give us your ads.
Anyway, you can find me on Twitter at Judge Anon. Usually I just talk about comics or video games. I also write comics sometimes. You can find a few of them at tapas.io/filthy sleeps. I'm one half of a comic book writing duo, and we've been putting out just short sci-fi stories here and there. Pretty fun stuff in general, if I may say so myself. So that's about it where you can find me.
And Bullski?
Yep, you can find me at Comrade_Bullski on Twitter for now. I don't know if there's gonna be like a Twitter exodus or something. I haven't made a decision on that yet, but I'm still there. I write about comic books and generally anything else that interests me.
Awesome. All right, and you can always find me on THE_SNICKMAN on Twitter, and also regularly on my YouTube channel here. If you're watching this. Now, what's going to happen next is that I'm going to unlist these two live streams, edit them together into one big one, and then re-upload it. So
The director's cut, baby.
yes,
Good luck with that.
Without the ending with the turtles.
yeah. All right, thank you guys so much for listening. Those who tuned in, and thank you so much. Have a great time out there, and see you again next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Get us in.